People in Marvel. My wife is the White Queen. Chapter 31. Where will she go? Ask for flower evaluation votes. Close black lens bracket. Quote. Professor, are you leaving? Betty Rose said with a look of reluctance. The laboratory is safe. You can rest assured that I have been noticed by the experimental drug side, so I can only think about it slowly. Find a way. Quote. Banner was silent for 2 seconds, turned around and hugged the woman who had chosen to stand by his side from the beginning, and said softly, I have to get out of here, Betty, we are not from the same world, stay with me, I will kill you sooner or later. 6 months ago, I was almost nominated for the Nobel Prize. I thought my life finally had light. But I didn't expect that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. I have to face terrifying psychological pressure every day to suppress him in my body. Just 2 hours ago, I watched myself kill 10 soldiers and even crush a few tanks. I don't want to cause you to become a ghost who is neither human nor ghost, and can only hide in the streets and alleys. If I hadn't been exposed to gamma rays, none of this would have happened. But I have no turning back. Speaking of this, Banner actually burst into tears. Like an orphan abandoned by the world. The northern border of the United States, Alaska. Li Feng hugged White Queen, sitting in front of the fireplace, looking at the snow scene outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling very comfortable. Little did he know that, at some point in the future, Banner will show up in Massa, even treating him as an enemy. The entire Marvel universe is subtly waking up and changing. At the moment Li Feng, however, slipped his palm into White Queen's clothes. The White Queen glared at him. It'll be hot in a while. Li Feng chuckled and said, Honey, let's go for a sleigh ride later, take a stroll in the snowy mountains, maybe we can meet some wild bears. Then the two of us will die for love. White Queen rolled his eyes at him and snorted coldly. Husband, I am strong and strong, how could I die for love? Li Feng waved his other fist and said with a smile, it kills a bear with one punch, no pressure. Is it really that strong? Huh. White Queen tilted her head, with a weird playful smile on her face. Li Feng shook his head again and said with a smile, let's talk about other things. What kind of TV series is Breaking Bad? White Queen suddenly asked curiously, who do you plan to invite as the protagonist? Li Feng thought for a while, stroked the plots he had seen in his previous life memories, touched his chin and said, it should be regarded as a movie in which the villain completes the redemption of life. I haven't decided on the protagonist yet. Oh. The White Queen nodded half understanding, and asked again, then, is there a god? God. Li Feng was taken aback for a moment, what god? It's the gods. The White Queen said softly, that kind, the gods who run rampant among the gods. That's not true. Li Feng shook his head and said, why do you ask that? He didn't understand why the White Queen asked herself such a strange question. Breaking Bad is a relatively small TV series. In the memory of the previous life, the ratings were not bad. Li Feng intends to use it to expand the business of the film and television company, so he came up with this idea. Then, are you going to make a movie about gods? This may be filmed after Mission Impossible 456 is released. The White Queen nodded, and didn't intend to ask any more questions. But she was thinking in her heart, what method should be used to let Li Feng know and accept the existence of her? It seems difficult. Although he didn't know what the White Queen was asking these questions for, Li Feng could tell that the White Queen had something on his mind. He didn't mean to ask, but after looking at each other affectionately for 2 seconds, he blocked White Queen's red lips with his lips. Doing is always more straightforward than saying, and it can better express Li Feng's heart. The White Queen, who was still a little apprehensive at first, also obediently lay in Li Feng's arms, enjoying the beauty of this moment. Canada City, Mutant College. As mutants like to show their faces more and more, coupled with the reason why Magneto continues to cause trouble among ordinary humans, the mutant school today can be said to be in jeopardy. Not long ago, the local government sent nearly 10 helicopters to block the skies over Mutant School, claiming that it was to protect the territory. Professor X had to talk for a long time before they were willing to leave. This is the base of the X-Men and the only place for the homeless mutants. If even this place becomes a victim of politics, I'm afraid the entire mutant society will be thrown into chaos. What's more, if Professor X didn't sense the existence of mutant through his own ability and united them, more dangerous people like Magneto would be born in this world. But the trouble is that there have been some uncontrolled emergencies at mutant school these days. The Omega-class mutant known as Jean Grey disappeared. In fact, it's not considered disappearing, it's more like being taken away by some mysterious force. As the only known Omega-level mutant in the X-Men camp, Jean Grey is definitely the subject of key protection. Because her ability is too terrifying. At the moment, Professor X is sitting in the brain-wave amplification room, searching for the whereabouts of Jean Grey through those densely packed electronic components. This state has lasted for nearly 5 hours. The biggest side effect of brainwave amplifiers is the damage to brain cells. Professor X's face was almost pale. Half an hour later, he struggled to take off the brainwave amplifier. Beast and Cyclops also took advantage of the gap to walk in. "Professor, is there anything new?" Cyclops, with his quartz eyes, asked Professor X anxiously. Professor X's face was dark, he shook his head slightly, and said, "Still have not. I expanded all the ranges, and I didn't find the strength fluctuation of Shin. In this case, either she is in a coma and cannot establish spiritual communication with me, or she hid on purpose and refused to contact me." Speaking of this, Professor X sighed. If it's the latter, it's okay to say that Shin is a very sensible girl. But if it's the former, I'm worried that she will be used by someone with a heart. These few words caused Cyclops and Beast to change their colors slightly. Jean Grey has had close relationships with all the X-Men since she was accepted into mutant school. She is a very gentle and kind girl. Even in order not to let the Phoenix Force in his body hurt others, he is willing to bear these pains alone. But such a girl who only thought of her friends when she was in danger disappeared inexplicably. It's unreasonable, very unreasonable. Where did she go? Where will you go? Chapter 32. Thor is displeased. Close black lens bracket. You mean, it's possible that Magneto took her away? Cyclops gritted his teeth. This lingering guy is said to have returned to the United States. If he really took Shin away, I must kill him myself. Killed him. It could be Magneto, or it could be someone else. Professor X rubbed his eyebrows, and said, "A person we are all afraid of. Others." Beast is considered a veteran member of the X-Men, and he is more careful in handling things. A figure appeared in his mind instantly. You mean, that guy named Li Feng? Hearing this, Cyclops suddenly remembered the collision between Professor X and Li Feng in the Stark building. In this world, the number of mutants who can suppress Professor X's mental ability can be counted on one finger. But that guy named Li Feng probably doesn't know Jean Grey, right? How could you take him away? Don't forget, there is another person beside Li Feng. Beast pushed his glasses and said solemnly, "Emma once betrayed us. Her relationship with Shin has always been much better than ours. I vaguely remember, before Emma left mutant school and followed Magneto, she wanted to persuade Jean Grey to leave here with her. Emma. White Queen. Cyclops, who has the best relationship with Jean Grey, couldn't sit still immediately after hearing that he had a goal, and turned around to leave. He said, "We have to go to Massa City again and meet that guy." Cyclops, wait. Professor X shook his head to stop him, and said, "Let's go, it's useless. According to my guess, Li Feng is probably also an Omega-level mutant, and his power is still above the piano. If you take the trouble to trouble him like this, you will probably pay the price for it." Quote, "If Jean is really in his hands, what should we do?" Cyclops clenched his fists and said word by word, "If Emma really persuades Jean to join Magneto, then X-Men will lose the qualification to be compared with them." Quote, "I'll go with you." At this moment, Wolverine suddenly came in from the door, with an unlit cigar in his mouth, and said indifferently, he can't kill me. Professor X and Beast exchanged glances, and finally did not choose to stop. This is also a no-brainer. The whereabouts of Shin Gray is a very important matter to them. Because they all know that besides the two possibilities mentioned by Professor X, there is a third possibility. That is, Shin is dead. After any mutant dies, it cannot be detected by the brain wave amplifier. As the youngest and most powerful mutants of the X-Men, they had to hold on to every hope possible. After Mjolnir was snatched by a tall man, Phil Coulson first reported the matter to Nick Fury. For S.H.I.E.L.D., this exotic object is definitely one of the treasured items worthy of research. It hardly took long after it fell within the territory of the United States that S.H.I.E.L.D. blocked all sources of information. But Mjolnir was still taken. In addition, that huge fire-breathing mechanical monster that came from nowhere even caused disasters in suburban cities, indirectly killing dozens of ordinary humans. This made the S.H.I.E.L.D. director, who had long been dominating the United States territory, very angry. After sealing up all the information related to the destroyer, Nick Fury immediately asked all agents to search for the person who took Mjolnir away. His intuition told him that the mastermind behind these accidents and disasters must have something to do with that guy. But what Nick Fury and Phil Coulson didn't expect was that although all the agents deployed by S.H.I.E.L.D. within the territory of the United States were dispatched, no news related to it was found. This guy disappeared suddenly, as if the world had evaporated. This is something that is very damaging to the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. In order to solve this trouble, Nick Fury decided to send someone to arrest Thor's girlfriend, Jane Foster, for interrogation. That is, the woman whose body was once invaded by Reality Gem. But what he didn't expect was, before anyone was dispatched, the man who took Mjolnir found the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters by himself. Yes. Just an hour ago, Thor broke into the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters and fought several agents. Without exception, those agents were all taken by him in seconds. Definitely, Thor didn't kill them, he just stunned them. After all, the purpose of his coming here was not to find trouble, but to find people. But Nick Fury didn't know who Thor was, let alone what he wanted to do, so he simply sent Hawkeye and Black Widow to fight him. The result is still the same. Being crushed and beaten. No matter how you say it, Thor is also a divine body, so facing these two people, there is not much pressure. Just when Nick Fury decided to invite Stark to do it, Thor took the initiative to inform his purpose. So, it became what it is now. Nick Fury looked at Thor with a gloomy face, and asked, "You say it again." I said, "I am a god from Asgard." Thor looked helpless, sat down on the sofa, picked up a bottle of cocktail, and complained while drinking. I said, "What's going on with you mortals on Earth? Don't you understand what I said? I have to repeat it several times. Especially you who wear an eye patch, do you need me to give you electrotherapy? Cheap. Too cheap. This appearance is underwhelming and arrogant." Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, "This hammer in your hand is called Mjolnir." "Yes, does it sound good?" Thor shook his hand casually and said with a smile, "If you promise me a few requests, I'll let you touch it. However, I have to remind you that generally only those with courage and strong fighting spirit will be recognized. I guess it's not very good." Nick Fury's face twitched violently twice. He took another deep breath, resisting the urge to call Stark to beat this guy up, and asked patiently, "You said, you came here to find someone, who?" "My sister." Thor shrugged his shoulders and said, "To be precise, she is not human. She is a god." Aside, hearing this, Phil Coulson couldn't help but rolled his eyes. No way. In this universe, do so-called gods really exist? Definitely. Besides that, I have also brought you some benefits. Thor stood up with a whoosh, walked up to Nick Fury, stared at him and said, "I know that your organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. very powerful, just like Asgard's status in the Nine Realms. If you can help me find my sister, Hela, then I will take your people to Asgard to experience life in the God realm. Maybe you can borrow this marriage creates a new union." "We're not interested in God." Nick Fury sneered. "In my eyes, the so-called gods are just creatures from another universe. Although your power is very powerful, there may not be any existence stronger than you in this world. If you want me to help, you have to show some sincerity. For example, join SHIELD. The tone is simple and the purpose is obvious. This time, it was Thor's turn to be upset. Chapter 33. The True Whereabouts of Hela. Close Black Lens Bracket. Let Asgardians work for SHIELD. What are you kidding? Do these people on Earth realize their status? Don't waste your time, one-eyed. Thor waved the hammer in his hand and said bluntly. You people on Earth will not understand what kind of existence a god is. I'm too lazy to explain so much to you. If you guys can help me find my sister, maybe I can join some shitty SHIELD. But I have one request, that is, I will not take orders from anyone. In the language of your Earth, it is human feelings. Nick Fury and Phil Coulson beside him looked at each other, and after 2 seconds of contemplation, they agreed with Thor's idea. Although he doesn't like the word God very much, but the current Avengers is in preparation, and it would not be a wise choice to let go of such a powerful teammate. You told us just now that your sister's name is Hela, didn't you? Nick Fury picked up a tablet from the table and asked. Knowing that he decided to help himself, Thor nodded with satisfaction. Retrieve statistics with the word Hela in the global name. Nick Fury said a word to the tablet, and within 3 seconds, a string of real-time data was displayed on the screen. There are 3,123 objects named Hela in the world. Among them, the United States accounted for 235 people. The whole country occupies 1,021 people. The whole country occupies 1,001 people. East Africa, South Africa and other SHIELD registered 865 people. So much. Nick Fury paused and frowned. Thor, can you provide a photo? There are too many people, we can't find your sister exactly by just one name. Searching so blindly is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Besides, you said you were from Northern Europe, but I have never heard of a god named Hela in Northern Europe. Thor rubbed his chin, remembering. Portrait. I've only seen her appearance on the murals in Asgard, but it's very vague. I can't provide the specific appearance, but I can describe it to you. After pondering for more than 10 seconds, Thor said to Nick Fury. It doesn't matter, we have the most advanced AR restoration system, as long as you provide some details, we can restore 99% of it. Nick Fury nodded and said. Half an hour later. After the restoration of the SHIELD artificial system, a cold and arrogant face appeared in front of everyone. Nick Fury patted Thor on the shoulder and said, how is it? God's kingdom doesn't have this kind of technology, does it? Thor twitched the corner of his mouth as a response. All his eyes were on the face in front of him. So similar. So much like an Asgard. The kind of arrogance that can only be contained in the eyes, and the charm that only Asgardians have. It should be her. Thor made his decision, nodding to Nick Fury. Nick Fury had no hesitation, so he turned to the technician in front of him and said, start the face recognition system and call up the clip where this face once appeared within our control range. Note that to start the precise range search, I don't want saw you make a bunch of crap and let's take the time to find them one by one. Yes. The SHIELD technician nodded, and his eyes became sharper as he looked at the screen. After an hour, a fragment appeared in front of everyone. In the clip, a tall, black-haired woman in a dark green robe was clutching her chest as she staggered along an alley with surveillance video. She looked as if she had suffered an extremely serious injury. A little sluggish. At the same time, to the surprise of Nick Fury and others, this woman had mysterious lines on her face, and there were streaks of green light all over her body. When the tall woman in the video walked out of the alley, she seemed to be exhausted and collapsed on the side of the street with only dim street lights. Thor subconsciously held his breath. 2 minutes later, a girl in a long white dress came from the side of the street. She spotted the green figure, squatted in front of it, and gently lifted the black hair covering her face. It was also at this time. A strange green light flashed, and the motionless figure on the ground suddenly woke up, and turned into a beam of light, piercing into the center of the young girl's eyebrows. The girl trembled all over, and after a green light flashed in her eyes, she fell to the ground. This is the end of the video. In the hall of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Thor froze on the spot, with blue veins on his forehead, and Mjolnir made a slight thunder sound as if he had received some kind of induction. Is her? Thor panted heavily, staring at the screen. She is my sister. Nick Fury pondered for a few seconds, then continued to say to the technical staff, record the girl's face and compare it to the database. Director, the video is a bit blurry, and the face is in profile, so the comparison result may not be accurate. It's okay, do as I say. Another 10 minutes later. The basic information and materials of the young girl were retrieved. When Nick Fury saw this face, he froze in place. If he hadn't experienced so many strange events, he might not be able to calm down at this moment. Emma, the daughter of the richest man in Massa City. Looking at the information on the screen, Thor slowly read the name of the young girl. Yes. The young girl who touched the green light in the video happened to be White Queen. Where is this girl? Thor turned his head and said to Nick Fury, I suspect that my sister entered her body with a divine body, and I want to find her. However, Nick Fury can't take care of these now, his mind is full of what Thor just said. God of Death, Hela. Asgard's heir in line. No, what a coincidence, right? Could it be that? That man named Li Feng is so strong because... Nick Fury didn't dare to continue thinking about it, he felt that the possibility was getting bigger and bigger. Maybe, the daughter of the richest man in Massa City is no longer that daughter, but an alien, who fell to the earth from the residence of the gods. A brooding Nick Fury didn't notice. Everything that happened in this office was seen by the guard standing at the entrance of the hall. This guard is named Grant Ward, and he is the head of a security jurisdiction of S.H.I.E.L.D. He usually cannot touch the core of S.H.I.E.L.D. After Captain America woke up, he was dispatched to the headquarters. At the same time, he is also a Hydra agent who has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. for a long time. He had watched Nick Fury's reactions carefully through the psychological observation method he had learned inside S.H.I.E.L.D., and the incident was etched in his mind. Chapter 34. The Adventures of Professor X Seeking Flowers for Evaluation Votes, Close Black Lens Bracket. A god fell on the earth. If this so-called god can be used by Hydra. Grant Ward sneered in his heart. As an undercover agent who can inherit his father's career and has been lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. for so long, his ability is beyond doubt. It can even be said. His hidden ability is no worse than that of Black Widow and Hawkeye. So, from the moment Thor walked into the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, he was completely able to think of all possibilities based on Nick Fury's reaction. This secret will also be passed into Hydra after a period of time. Soon, everyone walked out of the headquarters hall. Accompanied by many S.H.I.E.L.D. executives, Thor temporarily stayed in the villa area arranged by S.H.I.E.L.D. as a god who came to Earth from Asgard. His status and importance are self-evident. Nick Fury didn't tell him he knew the teenage girl in the video, and he made up a false excuse to fool Thor. Because even he himself is not sure that the god named Hela is inside the White Queen. After leaving headquarters, Nick Fury stopped focusing on Thor, but walked into his office, and saved all the information of White Queen and Li Feng in the cloud disk with the highest authority of S.H.I.E.L.D., which represented no matter who wants to view the relevant information, it must be approved by him. After doing all this, his tense body gradually relaxed. Looking at the sunlight outside the window, he narrowed his eyes and muttered to the air. This secret is really unexpected. You say so, Li Feng. I don't know if you, who sleep with her day and night, are aware of it. Sleeping with a god from outside. Are you kidding me? Nick Fury scoffed at the idea. God. What a noble thing. Having a god as a wife is a beautiful fantasy that only appears in movies, right? This guy named Li Feng is really lucky. At the same time, just after Grant Ward watched Nick Fury leave the headquarters with his own eyes, he quietly stole his colleague's IC card, entered the archives room, opened the door of the inventory, and tried to find all the documents related to Li Feng and White Queen. However, what he didn't expect was that although the information was found, the file had already been set as the highest authority. This permission, only Nick Fury can have. Damn it. Grant Ward gritted his teeth and had to give up his idea. If he forcibly applies for permission with his SHIELD Department IC card, then he will be targeted by Nick Fury immediately. The guy with the black eye patch had a nose as sharp as a hound's. With his current status, he couldn't compete head-on. While SHIELD and Hydra are conspiring because of Thor's appearance, there are also some unexpected disturbances on the mutant school. Cyclops and Wolverine originally planned to go to Li Feng to ask Chin's whereabouts, and even both of them were ready to fight Li Feng. But when they arrived in Massa City, they found that Li Feng was not at home at all. Also, no one knows where he went. They went to Li Feng's villa, but found no sign of anyone. Even if they wanted to fight Li Feng, they didn't have this chance. This kind of result almost made Cyclops run away. If Li Feng is not found, there will be no news of Chin's whereabouts, and they must continue to search aimlessly in the vast crowd. That's too much time wasted. Maybe it's a lifetime to find the old man, but it may not be possible to find the trace of Chin. At this time, Beast, who is more mature in X-Men, came up with a way. The method is very simple. Through the stimulation of sleeping pills, Professor X can fully enter the mental state, so that his sensory ability can cover the entire United States in a short time, and at the same time, all mutants in this area will be marked. Even if they don't use the mutant ability, they can still be sensed. But the consequences of doing so are also obvious. Once Professor X's most powerful spiritual ability is amplified, it means that his brain will bear even more terrifying high pressure. This side effect will accelerate the aging of Professor X, which is what we often call reduced lifespan. In this regard, Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm and others strongly opposed it. After all, Professor X is already in poor health, and if he does this forcibly, it will cause great damage. But Professor X did not listen to the persuasion, but insisted on getting into the brain wave amplification room, took sleeping pills, and entered a mental state. For this man who can only sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, any child who grows up in mutant school is his family. So, he had to do it. This plan is indeed feasible. After further expanding the induction ability, although Professor X did not find Chin's whereabouts, he found his old opponent. Magneto. He sensed a mutant breath that he had never seen before beside Magneto. And, most likely an Omega-class mutant as well. This discovery made Professor X feel that something was wrong. In order to see the mutant more clearly and enter his mind, Professor X took 1 times the amount of sleeping pills again. But what he didn't expect was that the mutant aura following Magneto directly launched an extremely powerful mental attack as if he had discovered him. This caused Professor X's spiritual world to be hit hard again, and he was forced to wake up. But the trouble was that the side effects of the sleeping pills were too great, and Professor X completely lost consciousness within a minute of waking up. This sudden situation caused Wolverine and others to fall into a burst of anxiety. Extreme Cyclops determined that the reason for Professor X's coma was exactly the same as when he first met Li Feng, and it was caused by the other party. There had never been a moment when Cyclops hated Li Feng so much. He decided to stay in Massa City, waiting for Li Feng to appear, and then asked why he, the mutant, wanted to attack Professor X. Li Feng was naturally unaware of what happened at mutant school. Li Feng didn't even pay much attention to anything related to mutant. Not to mention the disappearance of Jean Grey. Not only does he want nothing to do with SHIELD, he doesn't even want to have anything to do with mutant. Chapter 35. An intruder from outside close black lens bracket. This is already the 2nd day of their stay in Alaska. Although looking at the snow all day and all night is really a bit boring, but with such a superb companion as White Queen by his side, Li Feng does not feel lonely. On the contrary, the two also tried many indescribable things in the snow. How can you be in the mood to enjoy the scenery when you are accompanied by your beloved? 5 days later, Li Feng and White Queen returned to Massa City by special plane. At the moment, on the tarmac of the private airport, dozens of bodyguards in suits were already waiting. These people are the bodyguards sent by the richest man in Massa City to protect the White Queen, and some of them are also people Li Feng knows well. Mr. Li, we will take you back to the villa next. The car is ready, please follow me. If you have other arrangements, you can tell me, we will change the destination. Li Feng is used to these people's chatter. He waved his hand and said, "Go home first, my wife is a little tired." Yes. The two sat in an extended version of Lincoln, and gradually moved away under the adoring eyes of many civilians at the airport. The car is extremely comfortable, and there is a bartender dedicated to serving Li Feng and White Queen. Although Li Feng received a socialist education before time traveling, he has to admit that capitalism does have its merits. For most wealthy people, capitalism is much more convenient and enjoy life more. You don't need to worry about many things, and there will naturally be a service team to arrange everything for you. This is the benefit of being a rich man. Isn't it more restraint than fighting with aliens every 2 days? After 5 days of rushing in the snow, White Queen felt a little tired at the moment, curled up beside Li Feng and dozed gracefully. Although with the White Queen mutant's physique, she doesn't feel cold in the ice and snow field with tens of degrees minus, but I can't bear it. Li Feng has some unique requirements. Looking at the snow-white mountains every day, Li Feng must have some fun. And the White Queen was naturally unlucky, and couldn't even run. 5 days. I can't count how many times. Listening to the peaceful breathing of the beautiful woman next to her ear, Li Feng's heart gradually calmed down. Half an hour later, Lincoln stopped at the door of his villa. The bodyguard stayed outside the villa very sensibly. Li Feng woke up the reddish-white queen, and the two walked into the villa together. However, just when the two of them arrived at the hall, Li Feng stopped suddenly. Since turning on the Steppenwolf template, his the god's telekinesis and sixth senses are extremely sharp. He heard a beating heart in the cellar of his villa. Boom, boom, boom. Very rhythmic. Someone broke into your villa. Li Feng narrowed his eyes, and sent the White Queen into the bedroom. After telling her to take a good rest, he came to the entrance of the cellar, ready to check the situation. Generally speaking, no homeless person can break into the villa under the supervision of the bouncer outside the villa. So, either the bodyguards are guarding themselves, or a mutant ran in. After all, this is his house, his private property, and he doesn't like unfriendly objects on his territory. It will make him feel uncomfortable. Just as Li Feng was slowly groping into the cellar, Bruce Banner, who was lying in a pile of wine, had become a drunk who couldn't wake up no matter how he screamed. After escaping from the city full of soldiers, Bruce Banner came to Massa City and sneaked into the cellar while the guards outside the door were changing shifts. For this doctor who almost won the Nobel Prize, the only thing that can make his situation better is drink. Miraculously, as soon as he drank, the guy called Hulk in his body became unusually quiet. So, Banner hid in this luxurious villa. When he saw that the cellar was full of expensive red wine, he was very excited. Finally, I can sleep well, and I don't have to worry about someone chasing me. The owner of this villa is a rich and powerful guy at first glance. There are so many bodyguards outside, it is impossible for any soldier or the like to break in with a tank. However, the only thing that needs attention is when the owner of this villa will come back. After returning, how will Banner explain? Or rather, one punch to death. Being dominated by Hulk for a long time, Banner's temperament has also undergone some changes. Humans are strange creatures, they fear carnage, but they also love carnage. At this time, Banner, who was in a drunken state, suddenly heard footsteps faintly in his ears. The experience of escaping from all over the world these days made his vigilance much stronger than before. Even if he was drunk like this, his subconscious mind kept him vigilant. When he heard footsteps on the turning stairs, Banner's first reaction was trouble. He struggled to get up, trying to find a place to hide, but the effect of the alcohol still persisted. He accidentally fell to the ground again, making a loud noise. This completely panicked Banner. He began to look around, trying to find a perfect shade to hide his sight, but it was too late. The man who walked down the stairs slowly appeared in front of him. The four eyes are facing each other. There was a touch of panic in the former's eyes, just like the panic of a thief after being caught. There was a slight doubt in the latter's eyes, and there was even a playful look on his face. The air was quiet at this moment. Seeing that Li Feng didn't speak, Bruce Banner didn't dare to move around at will. He was trying to suppress the Hulk agitation inside him. "Dr. Banner." Li Feng said such a sentence suddenly. Banner thought he had heard wrong. "I know you." Li Feng smiled at him, then turned his head to look at the wine on the floor, and asked suspiciously, "When did you come in?" "About 3 days ago." Banner subconsciously answered the question, but soon regretted it. "Isn't this TM self-inflicted?" No, sir, please forgive me, I have no malicious intentions, I just smelled the smell of wine, so I broke into your territory, but I have no malicious intentions, please believe me, I am a doctor of scientific research, I can compensate for any losses here, please don't call the police." Banner quickly wiped his face and explained to Li Feng. "Don't be nervous, Dr. Banner." Li Feng seemed to have guessed something, reached out and patted him on the shoulder, and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should have become a grade A wanted criminal in the military, right?" How do you know?" Banner's hair stood up all over his body, and he took several steps back. "There are only two kinds of people who know that he is a wanted criminal, either his trusted friends or people from the military." Chapter 36 Sending Charcoal in the Snow. Close black lens bracket. Naturally, Li Feng was also a little helpless, he never thought that it was this guy who broke into his villa. He turned on the phone and glanced at the date. This point in time is just right. Hulk has appeared. Dr. Banner is also wanted. But why did he find his home? Why would this guy go to Massa City? This kind of coincidence, which cannot be called a coincidence, made Li Feng feel even more uneasy. But he didn't show it on his face, because he knew that with Banner's character, this guy wasn't much of a threat to him. "Dr. Banner, look at me carefully, do you feel a little familiar?" Li Feng suddenly smiled at Banner and said, "You." Banner wiped off some of the fog from his glasses, rubbed his eyes again, stared at Li Feng carefully for dozens of seconds, then shook his head and said, "I don't know you." Quote. Li Feng was speechless again, so he could only ask, "Have you seen The Expendables?" "Oh, it's you." Banner froze for a moment, and then said pleasantly, You are Director Li Feng." "Yes, it's me." Li Feng smiled slightly at him. "A few months ago, you asked someone to send me a letter, saying that you wanted to find me an autographed photo for your girlfriend, and that you were willing to help me in college. Do publicity in lectures, remember?" Remember. The defense on Banner's face gradually disappeared, he wiped his wrist and wanted to shake Li Feng's hand. "No, let's take a shower before holding it." Li Feng spread his hands and waved them, rejecting the gesture. Yes. As Li Feng said, Dr. Banner had sent him a letter a few months ago. The content of the letter is the same. Li Feng didn't refuse. At that time, he was still preparing for the movie and wedding, so he didn't want to have too much contact with the main characters of the Marvel Universe, so he asked his agent to take a photo and sign it and send it back. The friendship between the two is not great, but they have responded to each other more or less. For Li Feng, Dr. Banner is a very honest guy in the Marvel Universe. To be honest, he trusts other people too easily. But that doesn't mean Li Feng hates him. On the contrary, Li Feng admires him for his contributions in the field of scientific research. 7 Ph.D. Produces gamma rays. These honors can be regarded as more prominent existences in the Marvel Universe. "Oh, sorry." Banner withdrew his hand in embarrassment, and said, "Director Li Feng, I didn't expect this to be your villa. It's so offensive. Don't be angry. It's okay." Li Feng waved his hand at him and said, "Go take a shower first, I'll wait for you in the living room, if you have anything to say, we can talk about it later." After speaking, he turned and left without giving Banner a chance to continue speaking. Banner stood there thinking for a while, let go of his guard, and followed Li Feng out of the cellar. 20 minutes later. The two sat on the sofa in the living room. Li Feng poured Banner a glass of whiskey and said, "It's not a wise choice to take refuge with me, Dr. Banner. I've seen all the troubles you caused in that city on TV, and the military will sooner or later find you. I cannot provide you with a stable refuge." In order to avoid Banner's suspicion, Li Feng found a reason. It can't be said that he already knew that Banner would become the Hulk, right? Hearing this, the doubt in Banner's eyes disappeared. He raised the cup in his hand, took a sip, and said, "Those guys don't want to listen to my explanation at all. If they are willing to believe me, things don't have to be so bad. Yes, I tried my best, but there is no way to suppress that huge amounts of guy. As soon as I get angry, I lose consciousness. Those situations are really beyond my control. Director Li Feng, you have to trust me." "I trust you, Banner." Li Feng looked at him seriously. He knows that the current Banner is not the Banner who followed the Avengers to fight the universe. In the final analysis, he is just an ordinary person who has encountered a huge change in his life, and most ordinary people cannot accept such a change. Banner, too. The only difference is that Banner is smart enough to know how to measure his situation. However, Li Feng didn't intend to intervene in this matter. Anyway, it won't be long before S.H.I.E.L.D. will find this unlucky guy. At that time, no one in the military will be able to pose a threat to him anymore. "What are you going to do next?" Li Feng said again. "I can offer you money, a sum of money to let you leave the United States." This. Banner looked at Li Feng with some emotion, and said, "Thank you very much, Director Li Feng. I think this is definitely a timely help for me. However, I suggest that you better leave today." Li Feng looked at the time and said calmly, "My villa has been frequented by some people from the government recently. If they find you here, they may arrest you." After speaking, he took out a bank card from his pocket and handed it to Banner. "There's $1 million in it. How to spend it is up to you." 1 million. Banner's fingers trembled, and the bank card fell directly to the ground. "What? Too little?" Li Feng was stunned for a moment. 1 million seems to be a little less for a doctor. No, sir, it's too much." Banner smiled bitterly at the corner of his mouth, and said in a bitter tone, "I've been doing scientific research all my life, and I've never gotten so much money at once. Accept it, it's easy to do." Li Feng twitched the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, "Dr. Banner, nice to meet you, good luck." Hearing this, Banner also knew that Li Feng did not call the police to arrest him, which was enough to give him face. If the nearby military got the news, then Li Feng would definitely be in big trouble too. Therefore, he didn't intend to bother Li Feng anymore. He nodded, sadly picked up the bank card on the ground, and was about to turn around and leave. "Thank you, Director Li Feng. If I have the chance, I will find a way to repay you." "You're welcome. 1 million is less than 10% of a movie's revenue to me." Li Feng always had a harmless smile on his face. While he doesn't intend to cross paths with the Hulk, that doesn't mean he needs to be indifferent. Stay on the line in everything. You will be your Hulk, I will shoot my movie, and we will have a meal and drink tea together when we have time. Everyone is happy. Before turning around, Banner bowed to Li Feng, without saying anything more. Li Feng also has no plan to keep her. Banner's departure is beneficial to both parties. However, at this moment, footsteps were heard suddenly on the stairs leading to the bedroom. Banner, who was about to walk out the door, glanced back subconsciously. "I saw a snow-white woman with an excellent figure rubbing her sleepy eyes and walking down the stairs." Chapter 37. General Ross and Hash 039, warning close black lens bracket. "Husband, are there any guests?" The White Queen glanced at Banner, her pretty face turned a little cold. In front of outsiders, she will not show unnecessary emotions. Li Feng was about to introduce the two parties, but suddenly stopped. Banner, who was standing at the door, also realized something, bowed his head and fell silent. Even the White Queen on the stairs frowned unintentionally, and a look of solemnity flashed in her eyes. This is because, in the perception of the three, outside the entire villa, Nearly dozens of tanks, helicopters, and nearly 100 soldiers gathered. Apparently, the speculation in Li Feng's mind became a fact. This world, after all, is still a world ruled by the military. Even if Dr. Banner could run, he couldn't run past the military's intelligence network. Banner sighed, and sat down on the sofa rather dejectedly, his face full of exhaustion. He didn't want to run away anymore. At this time, there was a knock on the door outside the living room. Li Feng stood up, shook his head at the White Queen, motioned her to go back to her room first, then walked towards the door by herself, and opened it. What caught my eye was a young man in military uniform. There was a little indifference and arrogance in his eyes, and he said to Li Feng lightly when he opened his mouth, "Boy, this matter has nothing to do with you, let Banner come out." Li Feng glanced at him lightly. If he guessed correctly, this guy with the sergeant medal on his body and the slap on his face should be the man named Emil Bronsky in Invincible Hulk, is also the lizard monster called Abomination. Who let you break in? Li Feng was not impressed by this guy's arrogance, instead he asked. Could it be that the current United States military has the right to break into other people's private homes at will? In the United States, even if the police enter the house to search, they must have a search warrant, let alone soldiers who can hold weapons of mass destruction anytime, anywhere. In the eyes of the military, there is nowhere in this world that you can't go to. Emil Bronsky sneered, took out the pistol in his pocket, and said, "I repeat, boy, if you don't want to die, get out of here and release the guy hiding in your room. I warn you, he is a very dangerous person." "Are you threatening me?" Li Feng laughed back. "You don't have the qualifications yet." Emil Bronsky pointed to his military uniform and said, "Open your eyes and see what I'm wearing." When Emil Bronsky and Li Feng were in a stalemate, Dr. Banner took the initiative to step up and patted the latter on the shoulder. "I'll come, Mr. Li. You've been a great help to me. This is my destiny, I cannot escape. I don't want to involve you too." Banner, who took the initiative to expose himself, calmed down the tit-for-tat between Li Feng and Emil Bronsky. Emil Bronsky no longer stared at Li Feng with arrogant eyes, but with a touch of murderous intent. Banner's resignation to reality made Li Feng swallow the words in his throat. Originally, he was still thinking about whether to protect Banner again. After all, no matter how powerful the military of the United States is, they don't have the ability to fire on a well-known celebrity like him. But now it seems that Banner has given up on himself and doesn't want to run away anymore. This is not surprising. There were more than a dozen tanks parked outside, and even if he really wanted to run, the soldiers had to leave first. Who knows how long they'll stay? Moreover, if Banner didn't show up just now, Li Feng would definitely be in trouble. This is one of the reasons why Banner made the decision. Looking at Banner, Li Feng finally did not choose to intervene and nodded to him. After all, it was also his home with the White Queen. If the military and the Hulk fight here, I am afraid that within a few minutes, their home will be razed to the ground. I told you. Seeing Dr. Banner come out, Emil Bronsky grabbed his collar and said in a cold tone, "Even if you hide in the stinky ditch, I'll catch you too, remember." Dr. Banner looked at him expressionlessly, there was no fear in his eyes, just a touch of disdain. This kind of gaze made Emil Bronsky very upset, his face twitched twice, he turned his head to look at Li Feng, sneered, and said, "I didn't recognize you when I entered the door. Now I know who you are well." The famous director Li Feng didn't expect to be related to the military's A-level wanted criminal, so you're not afraid that the media will blow up your house. Compared with the media, your military seems to be more likely to overthrow my villa. Li Feng smiled lightly and said, "Also, Sergeant, if you dare to threaten me like this at my door next time, I think you will be severely punished." "Are you threatening me?" Emil Bronsky sneered, looked down at Li Feng, and said, "Believe it or not, I'll let the tanks outside stamp down your door right now. Just try." Li Feng smiled, while his eyes were cold, a strong sense of oppression slowly overflowed from his body. "Enough, Sergeant." At this time, an old man with gray hair and 2 stars on his shoulders came over. "General Ross." Li Feng recognized the old guy almost immediately. If anyone is to say who is the biggest winner in Invincible Hulk, then it is undoubtedly this old guy who sits on the position of general but is still scheming and scheming. Seeing General Ross approaching, Emil Bronsky quickly bowed his head towards him. Director Li Feng, my daughter likes your book very much. General Ross raised the corner of his mouth into a smile, and stretched out his hand towards Li Feng in a rather gentlemanly manner. Li Feng replied calmly. He didn't want to have any contact with this old man. After all, he's one of the villains of the Marvel Universe. In the future, get to know less unclean people. Concentrate on making your movies and be your civilians. You should never touch this kind of thing that you shouldn't touch. There's nothing easier than making money, right? General Ross smiled and threw a few words at Li Feng, then turned his head and ordered his subordinates to take Dr. Banner away. Finally, when he walked out of the gate of the villa, he looked back at Li Feng, with a hint of warning in his eyes. After all, no matter what, Li Feng is currently the most famous young director in Massa City, with considerable social influence. General Ross would definitely not let his men do it in such a place, and he didn't want to see Li Feng intervene in the Hulk's research, so he had to come forward to warn. Chapter 38 Military Laboratory Close Black Lens Bracket. After the tanks, helicopters and military personnel parked outside left, Li Feng walked into the bedroom with a calm expression, and hugged the White Queen in his arms. Li Feng definitely didn't plan to intervene in this matter, and there was no need to intervene. You can't just kill everyone just because you have a good relationship with Dr. Banner. That's not helping Dr. Banner, that's hurting him. Moreover, once he takes action against the military, the SHIELD people will immediately find out that something is wrong, and what he will face is not some enemies, but the entire United States government. The loss outweighs the gain. Honey, what's going on? White Queen asked with sleepy eyes. She heard clearly the conversation and things that happened downstairs just now. But she didn't know these people. It's an old friend who was taken away by the military as a wanted criminal. Li Feng didn't mean to hide anything, and explained casually, it's okay, don't worry, the military doesn't dare to move us in Massa City. Hearing this, White Queen didn't intend to continue asking. As long as Li Feng is by her side, she can feel a complete sense of security. After the two lingered for a while, they went out to do their own things. As the entire Marvel world looms closer to Li Feng on the way to recovery, his life has become less peaceful. However, it is worth mentioning that the Marvel Films company founded by Li Feng has received investment from multiple parties and has begun preparations for the filming of several films. Ting personally brought his own management team to find actors all over the world, and White Queen naturally followed him. For Li Feng, who was an 8th-ranked Duban boss in his previous life, he always believed that there are only two most important points in making a movie. The first is the story. If the story is not well told, the movie is basically a piece of shit. The second is the casting. If the casting is rubbish, even the best story and the best characters will become a piece of shit. Therefore, he personally leads the casting and story of each movie. As for the White Queen, there is nothing uncomfortable with such a life. Compared with staying in the mutant gang and facing the days of being hunted and fleeing at any time, this is the life she wants. In other words, as long as she is with Li Feng, she is willing to do anything. It's just that in front of outsiders, White Queen always has a cold face. But when it comes to the actors Li Feng wants to meet, she becomes a little more enthusiastic. Although it still makes outsiders feel an indifference that rejects others thousands of miles away, compared to her who was indifferent to everyone before, it has changed a lot. A philosopher once said that when you like someone, you hope that the other person will change for you. And loving someone means that you can change yourself for the other person. White Queen is like this, for Li Feng is slowly changing herself. Although this change is very slow, the White Queen herself is not aware of it. But after a certain period of time, when White Queen looks back, she may be startled by her own changes. As for whether this change is a good thing or a bad thing, just look at the tenderness in the White Queen's eyes. The two have gotten along with each other for a long time, and have produced a lot of tacit understanding. Dayton City, a military restricted zone. As Dr. Banner was captured by the military area where General Ross was located, he also fell into the endless hell. While Li Feng was busy shooting the film, Dr. Banner was imprisoned by the military's Scientific Research Institute and suffered unimaginable torture. In order to understand the secrets in Banner's body, General Ross did not hesitate to ask those chemists to inject serum inhibitors and powerful sedatives into Dr. Banner's body, two drugs that have huge side effects on the body, in order to prevent the Hulk from uncontrollably rush out of Banner's body. In addition, General Ross even obtained some nuclear materials with nuclear radiation from the military's arsenal. Anyone who is familiar with the plot of the movie should understand that his purpose for doing this it was to create a new Hulk. Before that, General Ross decided to tame Banner, an unruly guinea pig. So in these few days, Banner was not even as good as a military prisoner. At least the captives still have the human rights and freedom of a defeated country, but Banner is like an item that can only be slaughtered, and can't do anything. Banner deeply felt the malice from the military. Even if he agreed to let Hulk occupy his body, he couldn't do it under these powerful sedatives. So much so that Banner often wondered how wonderful it would be to tear this grizzled old guy to pieces when he was crazy in the suburbs. However, he seems to have no chance. On the third day after Banner's arrest, military personnel drained a tube of spinal fluid from him. No one knew where the tube of spinal fluid was being taken. Dr. Banner fell into a brief slumber as a result. And in the top secret basement of the research room of this secret base, a risky experiment is underway. This tube of spinal fluid, combined with the gamma radiation, is enough to make you a monster like that guy. General Ross put his hands behind his back, with a faint sneer on his face. However, I want to warn you, Sergeant, if I fail, I will not be responsible for your life. At the moment Emil Bronsky was naked and his limbs were tied to the experimental bed. A chemist who was in charge of injecting sedatives and spinal fluid was standing aside to adjust the ratio. Emil Bronsky grinned, with a look of madness and longing on his face. Hurry up and start this damn experiment, I can't wait any longer. I believe that I will succeed and gain this power. I am proud of the United States military, even if I lose my life for it. However, General, if the experiment is successful, I hope you will agree to my request. Betroth your daughter to me. Hearing this, General Ross raised his head and laughed a few times, raised his hand and patted Emil Bronsky on the shoulder, and said, "It's just a woman, as much as you want, I will give you as much as you want, but what do you want? Remember, you have been my subordinate for the rest of your life, whatever I tell you to do, you have to do you understand?" "Yes, General." Emil Bronsky nodded vigorously, looking resolute. "Let's start the injection." General Ross nodded to the chemist beside him, turned and walked out of the laboratory. "Sergeant, you will feel incomparable pain next. Don't worry, it's all normal. The spinal fluid will be integrated with your system under the condition of strong radiation. You need to resist this process by yourself. If you are on the way, if there is any discomfort, I will give you a cardiotonic injection, and if I am ready, I will start the injection." Chapter 39 Another Hulk Close Black Lens Bracket. The chemist in a white coat confirmed to Emil Bronsky, who was tied to the test bench. Emil Bronsky had a hideous face, staring at the light above his head with his blood-red eyes, and muttered to himself, "If it works, I'll tear you all to shreds." As the voice fell, a slender needle pierced slowly from Emil Bronsky's neck. Huge amounts of pain came almost like a tide, without any pause. Emil Bronsky gritted his teeth fiercely, the blood in his pupils gradually spread all over his eyes, but there was a crazy sneer on his face, as well as the ferocity of desperately longing for the war to happen. Yes. That's what General Ross is for. Using Hulk's serum and spinal fluid, create a more powerful existence than Hulk. Once it is successful, General Ross will mass-produce this potion without any hesitation, and Dr. Banner will become the supply of countless Hulks from now on. By that time, the military will undergo a qualitative change under the leadership of General Ross. Even. Unify the world. Definitely. The old idea of destroying the world and unifying the world has always been the idea of the villain in the Marvel Universe. General Ross's idea is nothing more than this. Soon, tearing screams erupted in the laboratory. And outside the laboratory, General Ross was watching everything that happened inside through the window. In his eyes, there is a desire for success, as well as terrible ambition. A large part of the reason for the idea of this experiment is because of the appearance of Mutant. As the general of the military region of the United States, he holds a high position and holds the military power in his hands. Naturally, he cannot tolerate the appearance of Mutant. He then learned about the experiments Banner was doing from the SHIELD files, which led to the discovery of the Hulk, and learned that his daughter had been helping Banner solve this problem. So, he decided to start laying out. But now, this bureau has reached the most critical period. As long as this experiment is successful, the United States Army will no longer be afraid of those mutants with special functions, let alone worry that the United States government will be attacked and replaced by mutants one day. Therefore, in the eyes of General Ross, this is a move that can change the future of the United States. General, the experimental values are very stable. At this time, the adjutant of the laboratory came up. In his hand, he held a tablet for monitoring Emil Bronski's various signs, and the values on it were all within the expected range. But he hesitated for a while, and said, "However, General, I still suggest you avoid it, because we are not sure about the final result. If the spinal fluid cannot achieve a perfect integration state with Sergeant Emil Bronski, then he may have some changes that we can't predict." The meaning of this sentence is obvious. Just can't guarantee a 100% success rate. Activate the laboratory's secondary defense system. I'll wait for your news outside. General Ross looked calm, and after a casual order, he turned and walked out of the laboratory. As the adjutant said, he didn't know whether the result of the experiment would be an angel or a demon, or even a mouse in the sewer. If the experiment failed, he would destroy the laboratory immediately, without giving Emil Bronski any chance of surviving. Because of this experiment, he did not report to his superiors. Definitely. Once successful, he will choose to report without hesitation. By the time those generals of the older generation knew that they had created such a powerful monster army, and I am afraid that all kinds of honors would be added to them. However, what General Ross didn't know was that terrifying changes were taking place in the laboratory. A monster named Abomination is slowly being born uncontrollably. Half an hour later, General Ross called the adjutant in charge of all experiments through the communication device in the laboratory. "How's the situation? Did it work?" he asked hurriedly. "General, the experiment was indeed a success. But the result seems a bit unexpected." General Ross frowned when he heard this, and asked, "Be more careful." The adjutant stood outside the laboratory, looking through the window at the roaring monster inside the laboratory, tearing the chemist's flesh and stuffing it into his mouth. With sweat on his forehead, he said in horror, He is eating people. Eat human." General Ross took a breath and rushed into the laboratory. When he saw that Sergeant Emil Bronski had turned into a huge lizard monster with scales all over his body, his whole face froze. "General, we can immediately turn on the gas button in the laboratory and kill him." It took a while for the adjutant to come to his senses, and said hastily. General Ross, however, did not agree with the idea. He sneered, put his hands on his chest, and said, "Did you see his eyes? That's the reason only humans have. It's completely different from that green guy. I believe in Colonel Bronski. He is the best soldier, his will is stronger than steel. He will not let us down, we are destined to succeed." After hearing General Ross's answer, the panic in the adjutant's eyes disappeared a little, but he still did not relax his vigilance, and kept his finger on the gas release button next to him at any time. At this time, in the laboratory, the monster transformed by Bronski had already broken free from the control of the operating table. In front of General Ross and the two of them, he bit the chemist's body into pieces until the ground was covered with blood. He didn't stop until all the blood and flesh had entered his abdomen. Power. This is the power I want. I want to kill. I want to eat meat. I'm going to tear up all the trash in this world. Emil Bronsky roared furiously towards the ceiling of the laboratory, and at the same time lost his mind and trampled all the surrounding instruments to pieces. At the moment, he has turned into a monster like a Hulk, full of power that has nowhere to vent. The muscles and scales on his limbs make him look like a giant lizard that traveled through in ancient times. Sergeant Emil Bronsky, can you hear me? I am your general and your creator, Ross. During the rage, a piercing voice sounded in the laboratory. Emil Bronsky turned his head slowly, looked at the one-way glass in the laboratory, put his face close to it, and let out a strange smile. Chapter 40 Unscrupulous Hatred. Close black lens bracket. Yes, General, I remember you. General Ross clearly heard an evil in these words that did not belong to Emil Bronsky. Indeed, as a soldier of the United States, Emil Bronsky's willpower and mental strength, as General Ross said, were unwavering. But anyone in this world, after gaining power, the first thing to do is to overthrow everything in front of them. So, after becoming an abomination, Emil Bronsky didn't show enough respect for General Ross. Very good. The voice of General Ross came again. Sergeant Emil Bronsky, congratulations on your new look. As your general, I give you a new title. Abomination. Next, you will. The voice has not yet fallen. A huge amount of fist pierced through the thick wall in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Emil Bronsky pushed aside the bricks on both sides and walked out of the laboratory. On his scaly face, there was a terrifying smile. What are you going to do? The adjutant standing next to General Ross could no longer hold back the fear in his heart, and directly rang the alarm bell in the laboratory. Click. But in the next second, this guy's head was screwed off by Emil Bronsky, and he was trampled into a puddle of mud. General Ross. Emil Bronsky licked the corner of his mouth. I like the title of hate. As a thank you for creating me, I'm willing to let you go. But I will not take any orders from you, because you will not agree to what I want to do. Looking at the tall and ferocious figure in front of him, General Ross remained calm except for a little cold sweat on his palms. He didn't seem to be surprised by the hatred's betrayal, but instead asked sullenly, "What do you want to do?" With a sneer on the corner of his mouth, he grabbed the corpse of the adjutant on the ground and stuffed it into his mouth. 10 seconds later, hearing the words that the hatred said in his ear, General Ross collapsed on the ground, his eyes full of horror. Afterwards, the hatred didn't stop at all. It directly smashed through the ceiling layer above the head, and jumped towards the upper floor of the laboratory. Not long after, countless screams and fighting sounded one after another. And Banner, who was lying in the petri dish, was woken up by huge amounts of noise at this moment. He slowly opened his eyes, and a touch of green gradually filled his pupils. At the same time, taking advantage of the matter at hand to be dealt with, Li Feng did not return to the villa immediately after the plane landed, but walked around the city center with the White Queen. Without the harassment from S.H.I.E.L.D., and without Mutant coming to make trouble, Li Feng is definitely at ease. It's impossible to stay in that villa every day and wait for trouble to come to you, right? As expected, the villa where he lives now has probably become the focus of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's also good to go out for a walk once in a while. White Queen definitely has nothing unwilling. Anyway, as long as she can be with Li Feng, she will not refuse, no matter what she does. The two of them were just like lovers on the road, holding hands and getting very close. Every time Li Feng walks through a clothing store, he will hold the White Queen's hand and go in to try on clothes. This is the daily life of Li Feng and White Queen. Show affection, spread dog food, enjoy life. At this time, the two passed a TV store that was broadcasting the news. In the screen, there was a loud smashing sound, which attracted the attention of the two. Li Feng glanced at it with doubts on his face. This glance made him froze in place. What's wrong? The White Queen noticed the abnormality, and then looked at the screen. In the picture, a helicopter is doing a live report over the city of Dayton. In the city below the camera, hundreds of people are running for their lives and screaming, A huge amounts of lizard monster is located in the center of the city, trampling around, killing anyone it sees. Is the source of the sensation. What happened? White Queen covered her mouth lightly. This kind of news is not common. She immediately thought of mutant. But Li Feng quickly shook his head at her and said, "Honey, let's go, it has nothing to do with us." "But it looks scary." The White Queen frowned tightly, keeping her eyes on the huge amounts of lizard. Li Feng didn't have the intention of dragging her away. The reason why he froze was because he saw the hatred. Too fast. The timing of the appearance of hatred is not quite right. Although in the movie, after Dr. Banner is captured by the military, it doesn't take long for the abomination to be created, but you must know that is the narrative time of the movie. This is the real Marvel world. But that being said, Li Feng has no intention of joining in the fun. As expected, it won't be long before an earth-shattering monster battle will take place in Dayton, where the Hulk will have a life and death battle with the abomination. Although the city of Massa where he is located is only a thin line away from Dayton, he is not a superhero, and he does not deserve to be the first bird. Moreover, no matter how fierce these two guys fight, people from S.H.I.E.L.D. will eventually come forward to stop them. What Li Feng didn't know was that with the emergence of his idea, S.H.I.E.L.D., located in the very center of the United States, received the news immediately and dispatched the space carrier to Dayton. And on the mothership sat a man named Thor. In the video, the hideous and ugly lizard monster is still wreaking havoc in the city, and the passing crowd are like ants in front of him, stepping on it to pieces. Is this the thrill of wanton killing? You ants! Give me death! The abomination roared and roared as it tore away the lives of human beings. After he was forced to retire from the battlefield, it had been a long time since he had killed someone so recklessly. From another perspective, the abomination is a soldier who loves violence and war very much. But his power is so small that he can't create his own living environment at all. So, he was forced to retire. In his eyes, this was a humiliating experience in his life. If he can't fight, kill, and see blood, what's the point of being a soldier? So, after gaining the same terrifying power as the Hulk, he released the demon in his heart without hesitation. And General Ross, who caused all these consequences, finally realized that he was completely out of play. He originally only wanted Banner's power to expand the strength of the United States Army. But it now appears that he simply created an uncontrollable monster. Chapter 41 Refusal to help Close Black Lens Bracket. Moreover, this monster also told him personally that in front of all countries, slaughter the city. For this reason, General Ross immediately mobilized nearly 30% of the forces of his military region after he regained his senses, found traces of the abomination, and blocked the entire city center. Even the tanks were equipped with armored bullets. The purpose is to stop the hatred and prevent him from escaping. If the hatred cannot be executed on the spot, then the honor of General Ross in this life will be completely over. He may even be sent to a military court because of this, and be hated by the people of the United States. The military of the United States is definitely one of the most elite troops on Earth. If the disturbance this time was caused by a terrorist organization, it would definitely be suppressed easily with the help of the military. It's a pity that this time the military's opponent is a monster that shouldn't exist. Can humans use conventional weapons against the Hulk? General Ross didn't know. But he didn't have a choice, he had to. He must be killed. Kill him. Everyone, all fire. General Ross yelled at the troops stationed around on the walkie-talkie. For a while, the entire city of Dayton was filled with flames and became a mess. Although the military evacuated the crowd immediately, poor humans were still affected. The deaths of these people were nothing in the eyes of General Ross. He clearly knew that if he couldn't kill the abomination here, more people would definitely die. At the moment, seeing the army firing on the news, Li Feng and White Queen didn't stop watching, turned around and walked towards the next street. Seeing the panicked reporters in the video, shouting for the helicopter to run quickly, Li Feng sighed in his heart. This is what it really looks like in the Marvel Universe. Mutants, aliens, monsters created by science. Living in such a world, the fate of ordinary people can be imagined. Not to mention the arrival of the Thanos army that will happen in later generations. The deaths and injuries caused by the Earth's native mutants and monsters that hate them are enough to be recorded in the annals of history. Maybe I should make this vicious fight into a documentary. Li Feng suddenly had a strange and bold idea. It won't be long before the entire United States will be the era of superheroes. Although human beings will spend a period of time safely under their protection, there will be more dangers that follow. Suppose if the fight between the Abomination and the Hulk can be made into a movie or documentary, and used to warn ordinary people, it may receive greater repercussions, causing greater fishing boats and sensations. Thinking of this, Li Feng vaguely left this thought in his heart. Definitely, it's just an idea at the moment. Always wait until the Hulk and the Abomination are done. As for stopping the Abomination from destroying the city, become a hero admired by the people. Li Feng had no such idea at all. Don't say anything else. He just hates this type of shrimp soldier and crab general. He can beat a party with one hand. But what good would it do him? Increase popularity. His title of director is already very big. Pursuit of heroism. Is there the fragrance of sharing the bed with your wife? He is not a saint, but a selfish traveler. If he didn't collude with those aliens and destroy the world as a big villain, he would have done his best. As for being a hero, forget it. On the contrary, White Queen is quite worried about this matter. If the monster in the video is trouble caused by Magneto or another mutant, then things are not good. After all, there is only a thin line between Dayton and Massa. If it spreads here, her and Li Feng's life will definitely be destroyed. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just in case. In her eyes, Li Feng is an ordinary person, completely different from a mutant like herself who has the ability to protect himself. Therefore, she must try her best to protect Li Feng. Dayton City. The artillery fire raged, and the surrounding streets were devastated to a mess. And General Ross, who was commanding from behind the army, was sweating profusely and his face was pale. He found that no matter how the tank's armor-piercing bullets were fired, it couldn't damage the Abomination. On the contrary, dozens of soldiers lost their lives here. This kind of unilateral loss is unacceptable to any soldier. What's more, it won't be long before what happens here will definitely spread throughout the United States. By the time, if he hadn't dealt with the Abomination, things would go awry. Those political enemies, those officials who have long wanted to oust him but have no reason to do so, will certainly not bypass him. Damn it! General Ross gritted his teeth and slammed the main console. If this place is not in the urban area, he will use missiles without any hesitation, and blast this lizard monster into scum. But now, he can only keep dispatching troops from the military area to tickle the lizard monster with those useless bullets. Just when the entire Dayton military was at a loss for what to do about it, General Ross's private phone rang suddenly. He glanced at the caller and frowned. "Hello, daughter." "Hello, General Ross." On the other end of the phone was a slightly weak male voice. "Damn it." General Ross stood up abruptly from his chair and growled, "Bruce, what did you do to my daughter? Why is her phone in your hands? Also, I didn't lock you up in the laboratory, are you in?" As an old father, he was instinctively hostile to all men who approached his daughter, and Dr. Banner was no exception. Not to mention that Dr. Banner is still having an affair with his own daughter. "Father, now is not the time to worry about these things." A girl on the other end of the phone seemed to snatch the phone and said hurriedly, "I've seen everything that happened in Dayton on the news. Are you in the city center now?" "Yes, daughter, I'm in the city center." General Ross couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he heard his daughter's voice. "But don't worry, Dad has a way to deal with this damn guy." "No, you can't solve it." General Ross's daughter directly retorted, "Let Banner go, only Banner can solve him. It's useless for you to waste bullets there, see the scales on that guy." In biology, from a technical point of view, it is no different from our modern body armor, and the bullets are useless. "No. He's a wanted criminal. I won't let a wanted criminal help." General Ross was furious, and when he heard his daughter lecture him like this, he vetoed it without thinking. For an honored general, it is definitely a very hurtful thing to pray to the wanted criminals he has arrested to help solve the troubles. Chapter 42 The Hulk and the Abomination fight close black lens bracket. But soon, the voice on the other end of the phone changed. General Ross, you can't do anything now, can you? Dr. Banner said calmly, I don't know what you did with my spinal fluid, but thanks to you, I can now turn into a Hulk. I have a little sense, so I promise, I won't mess with your men. I will find a way to kill that guy. If you want, just treat me as if you let me go. I will forget what happened between us. How about your hatred? Definitely, you can also choose to decline. Once I get this answer, I will hang up. It's impossible for you to contact me anymore, and I'll still be running around like a lost dog. But whether you can keep your position as a general is not guaranteed. It has to be said that the way Banner spoke quickly affected General Ross. From another perspective, Dr. Banner and Li Feng are different people. In the Marvel Universe, he's someone who has the qualities to be a hero very early on. He can't tolerate the hatred constantly destroying the city, let alone killing innocent people after he turns into a Hulk. Therefore, even if he escaped from the laboratory, he did not choose to hide. And Dr. Banner knows that it is simply not realistic to rely solely on the military to solve the abomination. Only by letting Hulk out can there be a possibility of fighting the abomination. After hearing these words, General Ross was completely silent. He is a person who values honor far more than life. Before rushing over, he had already thought about it. Assuming he couldn't kill the abomination, he would rush forward to die like these soldiers. He will not give those officials the opportunity to impeach him, let alone the power to deprive him of the golden star on his shoulders. But what happens to Banner if he can't handle this guy? Just when General Ross was hesitating, a message came back from the front line. The abomination opened a breach and was rushing towards the city of Massa. This news made General Ross turn pale. Massa and Dayton are two first-tier cities near the center of the United States, and one is more important than the other. If the hatred was rampant in Dayton, he, the head of the Dayton military, might be able to suppress the consequences. But if the abomination goes to Massa City, the city known as the most mutant, consequences are more than just consequences. General Ross gritted his teeth and agreed to Banner's request. He has to make a decision. There is no time. Go ahead, Banner. My people will support you. Help me kill this damn traitor. General Ross growled loudly on the other end of the phone. Soon, Dr. Banner drove to the outskirts of downtown. He looked at the abhorrence that was trying to break out of the encirclement from the coastal area of the city center. This monster covered in scales was destroying everything he could see. Food. Dr. Banner knew he had to. As for whether Hulk is a hated opponent, Dr. Banner actually doesn't have much confidence in his heart. But he, like General Ross, had no choice. He took a deep breath, pressed his chest, and muttered, Hulk, it's back to your performance. Next second, a huge amount of green figure roared out, and instantly hit the ground from a high altitude. The roar shook the sky, like thunder. After Li Feng and White Queen drove back to the villa, they didn't choose to rush to rest immediately, but turned on the TV to watch the news. Sure enough, all the TV stations are now reporting on the monster in Dayton without exception. It is worth mentioning that under the lens this time, there is an extra Hulk that is exactly the same as the lizard monster. Two muscular monsters hit me and I hit you, causing the crumbling buildings around them to collapse. The scene is extremely passionate. Someone came out to stop it. Seeing this green figure, White Queen couldn't help but focus her eyes. She always felt that the green monster looked familiar, but she couldn't remember it. However, she could clearly see that compared to the lizard monster, the Hulk's fighting skills seemed to be much, much worse, and he could only be suppressed and beaten unilaterally. The only thing worthy of praise is that the latter is extremely resistant. These two monsters, why don't they play WWE? Li Feng came from the side with 2 bottles of Coke, and sat next to White Queen with great interest, watching the desperate fight between the two super monsters. For him, This kind of one-on-one fighting scene is indeed very attractive. But the way Hulk was beaten was not so graceful. This is also normal. As the second version of Hulk, the power of Abomination must be stronger than Hulk, and the former is still a special soldier in the army, so fighting skills will definitely come in handy at this time. How could the main character kill all over the world from the very beginning? Doesn't everyone grow up after being beaten a few times? Definitely. Except for Li Feng. While watching the news, Li Feng was also thinking about another thing. S.H.I.E.L.D. should have received the message by this time. How will they deal with it? According to the normal movie plot, S.H.I.E.L.D. will definitely not appear in this fight. But combined with some previous changes, S.H.I.E.L.D. will definitely not let go of such a good opportunity. The only difference is who will stop these two giants. With the change of time, the center of Dayton City has been buried in smoke and dust, and two huge amounts of monsters are fighting in the most primitive way, which is rough and brutal but extremely shocking. However, as the fight continued, Hulk had already suffered multiple injuries, and under the fierce pursuit of the Abomination, he could only carry out passive defense by shuttling between different ruins. In other words, the Hulk can't beat the Abomination at all. Unless he is wearing the armor provided by Iron Man, he has no chance of winning against the scaled Abomination. Hate saw the right moment and punched Hulk on the head, sending him flying to the ground. He stuck out his long tongue, licked the corner of his mouth, and said with a sinister smile, "Run. Keep running. If you don't have this kind of ability, can't you? I haven't played enough, I haven't played enough." The words fell. Boom. 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 Hate kept hitting Hulk on the cheek with the huge amounts of fist. At the same time as the blood spattered, his strange laughter also sounded. Cool. 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 This is the power I want. Pissed. Hulk spat out a mouthful of blood, his face even more angry. Although the anger in his heart had reached its peak, he still had no chance of fighting back. Chapter 43 Fuck you, more excited than me. Close black lens bracket. Hate is far superior to him in terms of physical strength and skills. Dayton, above the clouds. An invisible space carrier hovering in midair gradually revealed itself. Inside the mothership, Nick Fury watched the two monsters fighting on the screen, and said to Thor, who was drinking next to him, "Go down and help. These two guys can't let this fight go on. The military even has tanks out. There is still no way to take them, but you must have. I have seen you fighting that fire-breathing steel giant in some materials. Your ability is attracting thunder, right? It's none of my business." Thor lay on the seat lazily and said, "Is there any benefit in letting me fight these two monsters? If you solve this problem, I'll find you a bottle of 1982 Law Fight and let you taste the most authentic red wine in the world." Nick Fury seemed to have guessed that he would say this, and replied casually. The voice has not yet fallen. A sharp and ear-piercing thunder sounded suddenly. Thor's figure disappeared in an instant. Phil Coulson, who was sitting on the sidelines observing the situation in Dayton, couldn't help but roll his eyes. This guy named Thor, since the first day he came to S.H.I.E.L.D., has been relying on them for drinks and never stopped. I probably forgot all about looking for my sister, God and the like. What are you doing? Do gods have alcoholics? Phil Coulson couldn't help murmuring. Then, he looked at the screen, his eyes suddenly widened. Dayton, downtown. A ray of thunder pierced through the flat ground, enveloping a blond man wearing a red cloak and silver armor descending from the sky. Like a spider web, the ground cracked several cracks, and a large hole visible to the naked eye appeared. And the man covered in lightning stood in the middle of the big pit. After drinking the beer in his hand, he raised his hammer and swooped towards Hulk and Abomination, who were wrestling together. Boom. The thunder was deafening. Hate that huge amounts of body was split into scorched black in an instant, and like a stripped cannonball, it fell hard into the ruins. This made Hulk, who was originally at a huge disadvantage, stand up in an instant, culling towards the Abomination with almost no hesitation. What the fuck, are you more excited than me? Thor glanced at Hulk and couldn't help raising an eyebrow. When did the Earth have such a ferocious existence? This guy's strength seems to be comparable to his own. Do not care. Let's get that law fight first. Thor jumped up from the ground suddenly. Mjolnir sounded thunderous in his hand, and slashed at the abomination in the ruins again. Now, even if the hatred can be carried, it cannot be restrained. The combination of Thor and Hulk is like a nuclear weapon. Thor is the god of war in Asgard. He has fought for hundreds of years and is exaggerated with rich experience. Moreover, he still has Mjolnir in his hand, and he can summon thunder and lightning at any time. Hate can only be a ghost. Roar. The Hulk growled again. The reporters located above the city of Dayton recorded the voice completely, and even broadcast Thor's appearance live in seconds. In the villa in Massa City, Li Feng and White Queen looked at Thor, who suddenly fell from the sky, and they were a little surprised. Li Feng never imagined that Thor would be the person sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. to solve the trouble in the end. He never thought that Thor would choose to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. earlier than Stark. Logically speaking, shouldn't Thor at this time be still dealing with the troubles caused by Reality Gem in Asgard? Although the timeline has not changed, the progress has been accelerated. Li Feng clenched the Coke bottle slightly with his fingers. He didn't get involved in the plot of the Hulk at all. He stepped in. He gave Banner $1 million to help him escape. Could it be? Li Feng didn't continue to think about it. He took a deep breath and decided to go to the bathroom to wake himself up. And what he didn't notice at all was the eyes of the White Queen sitting next to her turned emerald-like at the moment, and even her expression became cold. Her gaze was fixed on Thor on the TV. Mjolnir. I remember that only those of Asgard's royal blood can lift Mjolnir. And it once belonged to me. White Queen muttered to herself. As a female knight who once followed Odin to conquer the 9 realms, she has used the most suitable weapon, which is neither a spear nor a shield. Rather, Mjolnir, made for her by an Asgard executioner. Now, this hammer actually appeared on the earth. No matter how stupid she is, she understands what this means. Odin, Lord of the Gods, may have discovered her hiding on Earth. Thinking of this, White Queen's heart felt restless. Seeing the Asgardians on Earth is not good news. Asgardians and Asgardians have a blood connection. Once one party is too close to the other, they can perceive the existence of the other party. This indicates that he may be exposed at any time. Should I confess to him? In the heart of White Queen at this moment, another existence that does not belong to her is whispering to herself. With Thor joining the frontal battlefield, the abomination was completely suppressed by Hulk, and there was no possibility of retaliation. Although Thor didn't put his heart and soul into it, he still stood beside Hulk for the top red wine promised by Nick Fury, and occasionally shocked the long lizard monster with a hammer that made him uncomfortable. Even though the scales on Hate's body can resist bullets and armor-piercing bullets, they can't resist natural lightning at all. Every time Thor struck, he twitched for more than 10 seconds. In the end, Thor just waved his hand casually, and Abomination would instinctively tremble. So under the blow of Mjolnir constantly, the Abomination almost completely lost the resistance ability. Until Thor felt a little tired, he sent the Abomination away with a hammer. The disaster just subsided like that. The city center of Dayton has become a ruin full of bones. But fortunately, the number of deaths has been controlled within an acceptable range. As the dust on the battlefield gradually disappeared, the military personnel also surrounded them from the periphery step by step. After that, it's the finishing touches. Thor glanced at Hulk, whose chest was still heaving, nodded towards him, smiled provocatively, waved Mjolnir and disappeared in place. As if stimulated, Hulk roared helplessly in the direction he disappeared. The helicopter hovering over the sky gradually descended, and reporters from all over the world began to take pictures of the surrounding ruins. Not far away, General Ross, who was covered in cold sweat after learning that the hatred had been dealt with, also heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 44. If you can and #039. T-Fight, just kneel, ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. But there was still a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. At the end of the day, the Abomination is a monster he created, only to be wiped out by the Hulk and the alien with the hammer. Doesn't this mean that his creation and hard work are worthless? Moreover, He had no idea where this guy who was carrying a hammer and was able to discharge electricity came from for reinforcements. As a general in the military, he had no idea that the United States had such a number one figure. But soon, the highest authority officer of S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him a reply. The existence of Asgardians outside the Earth is no secret to the government of the United States. After learning of Thor's identity, General Ross fell silent in a rare way. He lost. Not only did he lose completely, but he even lost clearly. The impact of hatred has only just begun. On the second day after the incident ended, large-scale protests broke out across the United States, and even the so-called Lizard Animal Protection Association stood up and questioned what the government had done to the lizards. Definitely. These people don't know that Guy is a special soldier, it's just that the genetic mutation makes him more like a lizard. Later, General Ross was also investigated by the United States Department of Defense for dereliction of duty and violation of discipline. The turmoil that ensued gradually unfolded as the Marvel Universe further recovered. The Mutant Association quickly noticed this matter, and Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries, also paid attention to this scene. Everything is intertwined in the dark. But all this has no effect on Li Feng in the villa. Although Hulk specifically called to thank him after escaping the military's follow-up capture, he had no extra thoughts. This matter can be regarded as coming to an end. But just 2 days after the hate incident, another group of unexpected guests came to Li Feng's house. Cyclops, Wolverine. The reason why these two people arrived so late was to find out where Li Feng had gone. However, after inquiring for 2 full days, they found out that Li Feng had already returned home. So, they came to the door immediately. After ringing the doorbell, Wolverine and Cyclops rang the villa's doorbell. Before coming, the two had already decided that if Li Feng refused to help them or provide information, they would not hesitate to do anything. No matter how powerful Li Feng's mental ability is, he can't resist the damage of the two, can he? Soon, Li Feng walked out from the manor. Since White Queen went to the hospital to accompany his birth mother very early, he happened to be the only one at home in the villa. When he saw these two guys at the door, he couldn't help but froze for a moment. "What are you doing? Mutant again. Still looking for you. Li Feng, you should have seen us." Cyclops said bluntly, "If it's convenient for you, we want to ask you something." There was an obvious threatening attitude in his tone. Li Feng was not an idiot, so he naturally heard what Cyclops meant. He glanced at the indifferent Wolverine, waved to the two of them, and let them enter the living room. "What's the matter? Just tell me." After the two entered the door, Li Feng waved to them, motioning for them to speak directly. "Jin is gone." Cyclops and Wolverine looked at each other, and said coldly, "Professor X's mental power was also attacked again, and he fell into a coma. This must have something to do with you, right? Don't pretend not to know. Back then you worked on Professor X back in the Stark building, so we have legitimate reasons to suspect you." First, Li Feng raised a finger after hearing this, and said calmly, "I am not a missing person search center here. If Chin is missing, you should call the police. Second, I have been busy with work these days, even no one from Professor X has ever seen it. You said I made him faint, did I do it with my mind? Show me some evidence, and then talk. You mean, you don't want to admit it anymore?" Cyclops was also grumpy, and Dang even put his finger on his glasses. "I warned you, Li Feng, don't be disrespectful. If you cooperate with us, if you tell me everything you know, I promise you will be safe." Afterwards, Wolverine's claws also showed up. "Are you threatening me?" Li Feng's eyes gradually turned cold. "It's really a dog's skin plaster, and it can't be shaken off." "No, it's a warning." Cyclops sneered, took off his glasses suddenly, and planned to stand on the sofa next to Li Feng to prove his skills. However, what he didn't expect was that the moment he took off his glasses, a terrifying aura suddenly descended from the sky, and at the same time, a killing intent seeped from the cold void, completely enveloped the surroundings. A cold snort sounded. Sitting on the sofa, Li Feng raised his legs, and behind him appeared an extremely tall giant figure. Holding a long axe and wearing golden armor, the giant stared straight at Cyclops and Wolverine with eyes that seemed to contain thousands of stars. Dare to come to my villa and threaten me, you two are really brave. I repeat, I don't have any thoughts about you mutants. But if I wanted to, I could easily kill all of you. Remember, it's everyone, no matter Alpha or Omega. In my eyes, they are all ants that can be easily crushed. The words fell. Cyclops and Wolverine instantly collapsed to the ground, sweating profusely. And Li Feng on the sofa, like an ordinary person, picked up the red wine on the table and took a sip. You, who are you? Cyclops looked terrified, looked at Li Feng and questioned. Me. I am Li Feng. Li Feng responded lightly. No. You're not an ordinary person, and you're not a mutant. Cyclops swallowed. You are like a demon, aren't you? Devil. Li Feng couldn't help laughing. If the Steppenwolf template in his body could be considered a demon, then it was indeed a demon. At this time, facing Li Feng's indifference, Cyclops suddenly knelt down, lowered his head and gritted his teeth and said, Mr. Li Feng, I apologize for the offense just now. Since you are so powerful, can you please do the mutant group a favor? If you disagree, I'll just kneel here and won't leave. Kneel here and don't go away. Li Feng couldn't help rolling his eyes when he heard this. What? Playing tricks if you can't beat it? Have you ever played like this? Looking at Li Feng's unmoved appearance, Wolverine also began to feel hesitation in her heart. Do you want to kneel down too? However, what Li Feng said next made him dispel this idea instantly. Chapter 45. What is a base? Ask for flower evaluation votes. Close black lens bracket. You guys, have you heard of Apocalypse? This sentence made Wolverine's face darken. He didn't know what Li Feng meant by mentioning the name. If anyone in the mutant gang has lived the longest, it should be Logan without a doubt. So Logan actually knows a lot about Apocalypse. With the emergence of Magneto, the secret of Apocalypse is no longer a secret. But for those mutants who grew up under Professor X's umbrella, that's too far away. At the moment Cyclops kneeling on the ground obviously didn't understand what was going on, but he could sense that the name was wrong, very wrong. Li Feng leaned on the sofa, crossed his legs, and said lightly, It seems that Mr. Logan has heard of it, but you, sunglasses, don't seem to know what it is, do you? Cyclops looked up, looked at Wolverine, and asked, Logan, tell me, what is it? Wolverine stretched out her calloused fingers, pinched the center of her brows, her face became a little serious. She didn't answer Cyclops, but turned to look at Li Feng, and asked, That's just a legend, isn't it? Yes. Li Feng crossed his fingers and said flatly, It's a legend. So, what does it have to do with Chin's disappearance? You understand me. Li Feng twitched the corners of his mouth, looked at the manor outside the door, and said softly, Mutants' winter is coming. The apocalypse has arrived. Jean Grey will be the key figure in determining the final direction. Who do you think will take her away? Hearing this, Wolverine clenched her fists tightly, every inch of skin on her body tensed. He gritted his teeth and said, Who the hell are you? Me. I'm just a second-rate director who makes movies. Li Feng shrugged and narrowed his eyes. I don't want to be involved in the Battle of Mutant, so I can tell you very clearly that Chin is not in my hands. Professor X, the coma has nothing to do with me. Everything you are doing now is blind and futile. If you can learn to be smarter, you should go to the old horse Eisenhart. Magneto. Cyclops asked urgently, Mr. Li Feng, what do you mean, Magneto took Chin away? No, it's Apocalypse. Wolverine took a deep breath and said, Apocalypse has arrived, mutant winter has arrived, and we have to solve bigger troubles. After finishing speaking, he left towards the door without any hesitation. Cyclops froze on the spot, and only realized after a few seconds, looked back at Li Feng, and followed closely. Li Feng shook the cup in his hand, looked at the figures of the two people who were gradually going away, couldn't help squinting his eyes and began to think. If he guessed correctly, at this point in time, the X-Men should be experiencing the plot of reversing the future. But the emergence of Apocalypse undoubtedly accelerated the progress of the mutant plot. The disappearance of the violin. Professor X's coma. These antecedents that herald the imminent demise of Mutant are all involved in Li Feng in Invisible. Although he was not interested in it from the beginning to the end, and had no intention of intervening. Maybe, Professor X will know something. An idea suddenly popped up in Li Feng's mind. He slowly closed his eyes, and the cup in his hand came to a standstill, and then the air in the entire room passed, and it was also frozen at this moment. A slight ripple sounded. The surrounding scenes began to change, and countless stars floated out of thin air, as if going back in time. Li Feng turned into a translucent phantom, which disappeared into the living room of the villa instantly based on the speed of light. At the same time, Mutant School, in Professor X's room. At the moments Professor X was lying on the bed with a pale face, his forehead was covered with sweat, and his body was shaking constantly. In his spiritual world, there is a cloud of black mist that keeps haunting him, preventing him from waking up and returning to the real world. But soon, everything settled down. No one noticed that a group of translucent figures drilled out of the void entered his brain through some means. Li Feng put his hands in his pockets, glanced at the figure not far away surrounded by a cloud of black mist, and called softly, "Charles." No respond. He looked around, and this place was indeed the spiritual world of Professor X, but he clearly felt that there was an extra force stirring this place into a mess. All the chaotic memories are floating around in this extremely dark space, like the fragments of a porcelain bowl after being thrown on the ground, messy. Li Feng was not in a hurry to wake up Professor X, his purpose of coming here was to find some answers he wanted to find. But just then, the black mist enveloping Professor X's mental body swept towards Li Feng crazily as if he had been stimulated by some kind. Court death. Li Feng snorted coldly, raised his right hand and waved lightly. Laugh. When the black mist was about to touch his spiritual body, it was instantly bounced away by an invisible force. But Li Feng frowned. It hasn't been erased. What is the origin of this black mist? When he was puzzled, the black mist that was almost dispersed slowly condensed into a human figure whose face could not be seen clearly. Li Feng squinted his eyes, looking at this figure, his murderous intent gradually rose. Jia Jia Jia. The figure seemed to have noticed something, let out a strange laugh, and said in a hollow voice, "What do I see from you? Illusion, ancient times, doom, power, eternal life, you are simply too perfect, perfect to me, can't wait to get your body." Li Feng rolled his eyes. "Get my body. I'm not gay," he said helplessly. The figure stood there for 2 seconds, and then the strange voice came up again. "What is fucking?" Li Feng. Jia Jia Jia. The figure let out a few more strange laughs, walked a few steps around Li Feng, as if looking at something, and said at the same time, "You want to help him? This guy named Charles." "I don't want to." Li Feng shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, "I just want to see who is playing tricks." "Now, I see it." "Oh," the human figure said, "don't you want to save this guy's life? If you don't stop me, I will soon occupy this body, and he will be controlled by me and obey all my orders. None of my business." Li Feng couldn't be bothered to continue talking nonsense. He suddenly raised his hand, grabbed the figure's neck, and the power in his body gushed out crazily. A terrifying spiritual force wrapped the black figure tightly. He said, "I warn you, Apocalypse, you are not qualified to get my body. If you play this little trick again to involve me, I promise to find you, and then tear you to shreds. Do you understand?" Chapter 46 Hiding Merit and Fame. Close black lens bracket. The figure formed by the black mist trembled for 2 seconds, then still let out a strange laugh. With disdain, sarcasm, Li Feng raised his eyes expressionlessly. 2 seconds later, he sneered at the corner of his mouth. Moment. A turbulent mental storm swept around, and formed a wind blade-like flow layer, which instantly filled the entire spiritual space of Professor X with a terrifying aura. And the black mist figure, whose neck was strangled by Li Feng with one hand, was cut crazily by the surrounding mental fragments bit by bit at the moment, so that it let out a piercing and ear-piercing scream. "I'm a person who doesn't like being threatened. Even if you lived for more than 3,000 years. In my eyes, it is also an ant that can be easily crushed to death. Click. A storm rises. The black mist figure formed by the spiritual power of Apocalypse collapsed instantly and turned into a piece of powder. At the same time, in the city of Massa, in a mysterious basement, a figure covered in blue light seemed to have suffered an incomparable blow, and suddenly spit out a mouthful of dark blue blood, and then smashed his whole body against the wall, with spider web-like cracks spreading to both sides, which was shocking. His empty eyes were filled with disbelief. How is it possible? Spiritual power affects the real body. This. Apocalypse took a deep breath, and it took a while to calm down. He lived for 3,000 years, though he slept most of the time. But during these sleeping hours, his mental power is growing day by day. In order to control Professor X, he kept part of his spiritual power in his brain, in order to control Professor X for his own use through his powerful spiritual power. But this guy named Li Feng not only easily captured his power, but even smashed everything with stronger spiritual power. This is simply impossible for Apocalypse. How could a young man who didn't even look 30 years old surpass the spiritual power he had accumulated for 3,000 years? It's incredible. In the mental space of Professor X, Li Feng raised his hand to disperse the surrounding black mist, and walked to Professor X's spiritual body, and looked down. The black mist surrounding his mental body has been dispersed by himself, but his mental body is still almost transparent. If he is one step late, Professor X will probably suffer. Li Feng frowned and sighed. Although he didn't want to get involved, Apocalypse was so smart that he could think of using this method to get close to him. This is not a good sign. As for Professor X, even if he doesn't want to care about it, if this guy dies, those mutant children who haven't grown up probably won't have many days to live. The best result is to be arrested and do all kinds of things all day. Experiment, worst result. Nothing more than death. Definitely, for Li Feng, the death of Professor X has little to do with him. He just couldn't bear the sight of Apocalypse stalking him behind his back. Since Professor X taught him a lesson this time, I hope he can take care of himself. When Li Feng used the spiritual power of the Steppenwolf template earlier, Li Feng didn't hold back, and the body of Apocalypse was naturally injured. Although it wouldn't kill him instantly, it would take time to recover. Anyway, if that guy dares to make trouble again, Li Feng will definitely solve this trouble for mutant without any hesitation. After weighing in his heart, Li Feng made a decision. He intentionally injected a little power into Professor X's mental body to ensure that the old man would not fall into a coma again due to the loss of mental power after waking up, and then erased the memories that happened in his mental space. 2 minutes later, Li Feng left quietly, hiding his achievements and fame. And Professor X, who was lying on the bed, gradually woke up a few hours after he left. He rubbed his brain that was in severe pain, and didn't understand what happened, but he could clearly recall the reason for his coma. I recovered. Professor X paled, picked up a bottle of water on the table, and poured it into his mouth. Li Feng, who was sitting on the sofa, suddenly came to his senses, and at the same time he let out a long breath. Everything in the room returned to normal. This was the first time he had used the Steppenwolf's spiritual power like this. Although some were not very skilled, this guy was worthy of being the military commander of the new Protoss, and he was simply incredibly powerful. The combination of mental attack and substantive attack may bring unexpected gains. Li Feng rubbed his chin and thought for a few seconds, then he didn't bother with this matter anymore. Now power is far less important to him than making money. Even if he has such a powerful Steppenwolf template, he won't be too busy to be a superhero. He glanced at his watch. It was still early, and he planned to find something to do for himself. At this time, news reports about the Dayton incident suddenly appeared on television. Li Feng's eyes couldn't help but brighten up, so he simply took a wave of enthusiasm and made the battle between Hulk and the Abomination into a movie. There will be more and more superheroes in the future. Movies of this type will definitely stimulate the market and bring about repercussions. Thinking of this, Li Feng sat at home and began to use his contacts to form a team, recruit actors, set salary, invite and other work. For him, who has become a well-known director in Massa City, these things have long been extremely proficient. The investment for this film does not need to be huge, because it is the superhero film that Li Feng's Marvel Pictures initially tested the waters. If the response is not good, he does not need to worry about anything. After all, for director Li Feng, most of the time he is only responsible for paying the money, and the specific operation and work are left to professionals to take care of. Definitely, except for those more important films, he will personally see them. During this period of time, filming has provided him with a lot of income, so he is not short of money, and he is not particularly eager to make money. He just wants to find something to do so as not to be too boring. This is also related to Li Feng's situation, who made him marry early. You have to support your family, your wife. If he didn't meet the White Queen when he traveled to the Marvel world, let alone the help of the system, then Li Feng's greatest possibility is to use his own understanding of the Marvel Universe to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. as an agent, or an intelligence officer. But now that there is White Queen, and the two are very affectionate, he should fulfill his responsibilities as a man. A few hours later, White Queen, who was with her mother in the hospital, also returned home. After the two lingered for a while, the White Queen ran to the kitchen to cook. Chapter 47. The director and H039's worries close black lens bracket. And Li Feng, who has dealt with too many things recently, also plans to stay at home with White Queen for a few days with peace of mind. However, what makes Li Feng helpless is that troubles always come to him when he is bored. Didn't I tell you not to bother me again? Li Feng, who was about to have dinner with the White Queen, leaned against the door of the villa, looking helplessly at Black Widow Natasha Romanoff. He had already made it very clear to Nick Fury, telling the S.H.I.E.L.D. people not to bother him anymore, but instead of listening, this woman didn't listen, but she didn't invite it. Mr. Yi Feng, I have something to trouble you. It has nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D., but it has to do with your wife. Natasha Romanoff took a deep breath, with a distressed look on her face, as if she had some difficulties, and she hesitated to speak. Seeing Natasha Romanoff's expression, Li Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew about the White Queen being a mutant. If the purpose of Natasha Romanoff's coming here was indeed because of the White Queen, then he couldn't just sit idly by. Speak, just at the door. Li Feng said softly, but he didn't make his words too serious. Natasha Romanoff wouldn't have risked a fight with herself if it was easy or effortless. So, things should be more troublesome than I imagined. Natasha Romanoff didn't try to guess what Li Feng was thinking. She was relieved on the surface when she heard that he was willing to let her speak. Then, Natasha Romanoff spoke slowly. It wasn't the White Queen that had the accident, but the White Queen's father. Because the underground world of Massa City has been changing very much and frequently recently, White Queen's father's business has been affected, and even been robbed for some reasons. This has caused a great loss to the face of Massa City's father. Stop loss, using some unclean means. This is a very common practice for businessmen, but the trouble is that White Queen's father was kidnapped last night, and the kidnapper is likely to be mutant. Now Massa City has gathered a large number of mutants. They have absolute hatred for human beings. Coupled with the status of the richest man in Massa City, once they fall into their hands, the fate will definitely not be so good. This matter is neither big nor small, but since it involves Li Feng, Natasha Romanoff notified him immediately, and said that S.H.I.E.L.D. has detected the specific location and can take him to the rescue. Li Feng had actually imagined this kind of thing in his heart. With the awakening of the Marvel world, people around him would definitely encounter some troubles, but he didn't expect that there would be people in Massa City who would dare to do this. However, Li Feng did not fully believe it, and even began to have some doubts in his heart. My old father-in-law is indeed an ordinary person, but he is rich and powerful. How could he not hire some mutant bodyguards to protect him? Unless some alpha-level or omega-level mutant took action himself, he wouldn't have been kidnapped so easily, right? And what Natasha Romanoff meant behind the scenes was that she wanted Li Feng to go out with her, which was also very unusual. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't it be Shield who, in order to please Li Feng, would directly act first and then play to save his father-in-law, so wouldn't Li Feng owe them a favor? Could it be that? Li Feng couldn't help squinting his eyes. Another possibility came to his mind. How on earth does Apocalypse know it exists? No doubt. There is only one possibility. Magneto. However, if Li Feng remembers correctly, Magneto should have a mutant named Mystique under his command. Thinking of this, Li Feng's eyes turned cold, and he sneered even more in his heart. He pretended to be calm and fixed Natasha Romanoff with scrutiny. Soon, the latter became a little uncomfortable, his eyes slightly dodged. This kind of demeanor should not appear on a SHIELD 10th level agent. Understood. Then take me there, and I will save my father-in-law now. Li Feng smiled and said to the fake Natasha Romanoff in front of him. He walked back to the villa and greeted White Queen, saying that suddenly a business friend came to meet and wanted to go out, but he didn't tell him the truth. He then left the villa with Natasha Romanoff. Since Magneto and Apocalypse approached him so deliberately and came up with such an appropriate reason, he also gave each other a face and went to see what tricks these mutants were planning to play. By the way, these troubles can be solved at one time, saving troubles in the future. Seeing Li Feng drive away in the car, White Queen's eyes gradually turned cold. Li Feng has been sticking to her for the past few days, and she has no time to do other things. Now that Li Feng took the time to leave, she happened to investigate something. SHIELD. Asgard. Mutant. These things that may destroy the harmony between her and Li Feng's family. 2 seconds later, the White Queen turned into a phantom and disappeared into the manor. Just as Li Feng and White Queen left the villa, Nick Fury, sitting at the SHIELD headquarters, fell into deep thought. He's been struggling lately. Very tangled. There is no other reason. Thor was unwilling to work for SHIELD after that shot. In that guy's words, why let you guys whore for nothing? Thor is reluctant to join SHIELD unless Thor's sister is found soon. Such a powerful god, Nick Fury naturally didn't want to let it go. With the help of the light on the desktop, he looked at the documents in front of him, his brows were furrowed, and his eyes were full of helplessness. The information is all the information related to White Queen that can be found, which also makes Nick Fury firm in one thing. White Queen is definitely not an ordinary person. It is even possible to be a symbiont with the god called Hela. This kind of life form is very rare in the data records of SHIELD. Nick Fury's entanglement also stems from this. Knowing that Thor's sister Hela is inside the White Queen's body, should he touch it? Or not? If he made contact, what identity did he use to make contact? The whole world knows him like this. Moreover, what reason did he have to use to hide from Li Feng and contact the White Queen? That rascal. This is no ordinary wife protecting wife. If they don't get in touch, Thor will do it himself sooner or later. If he fights with Li Feng at that time, it is estimated that the United States will suffer again. Nick Fury knew he had to avoid that. After thinking carefully for a long time, he frowned and murmured. If I am bold and tell Li Feng this secret, will I gain his trust? Chapter 48. Deterrence by the God of Death. Close black lens bracket. The consequences of doing this are too great. If it fails, the relationship between SHIELD and Li Feng will have no room for redemption. But if you don't, the result is not much better. As for the relationship between Li Feng and White Queen, Nick Fury is completely out of ideas. Originally, he wanted to use Natasha Romanoff, a goddess-level agent who was proficient in all kinds of temptations, to seduce Li Feng, but now it seems that that guy doesn't accept this trick at all. And he was also afraid that if the White Queen found out about his provocation of Li Feng and his wife, his fate would be miserable. Thor's strength is so strong, how weak is his sister's strength? To try to get close to such a powerful god, even Nick Fury feels a lot of pressure. Forget it, just confess to Li Feng. Nick Fury took a deep breath, cleaned up the table, and was about to stand up and go to Li Feng's villa, but at this moment, the hairs on his face stood on his head. Because in front of him, a figure appeared. This figure was pretty, but full of murderous intent. At this moment, the air became quiet. Nick Fury even heard his own heartbeat. He dared not move, not at all. Because the eyes of the woman in front of him were shining with an emerald green light, enveloping him from top to bottom. The breath of death filled the entire room. Yes. It was the White Queen who had slipped past all the security systems to Nick Fury's office. Or, the god of death, Hela. Hela took over the White Queen's body, looked at the one-eyed dragon in front of her coldly, and released her own oppressive force without leaving any trace. Hello, death god of Asgard. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said in a trembling voice. His intuition over the years told him that if he didn't speak to this woman again, she might wipe his neck directly. You know me. Hela didn't care about Nick Fury's fear, but looked at the information on the table. The person on the information, Hela is very familiar with, that is herself. This. Nick Fury showed a smile uglier than crying, and explained helplessly, Miss Hela, your own brother has already come to your door. If S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't help him find you, he will use his hands to find you. Mjolnir smashed my workplace, so I was also coerced. Quote. So far, the best way is to tell the truth. But you can rest assured, I don't intend to disturb your life, nor do I intend to know why you are in Li Fang's wife's body. Nick Fury knew exactly why Hela was here, so he said this right after. Why would an Asgard god hide in a human body? Obviously, she was avoiding something. At the same time, Nick Fury's brain was racing. He is thinking now, what should he do to save his life? Nick Fury doesn't know much about Hela's information. His only understanding is what he heard from Thor, she is a god. As for what this god has done, what abilities he has, and which one is stronger compared to Captain America, Iron Man, or the Hulk, he has nothing at all. So, without a doubt, if Nick Fury knew exactly what Hela was doing with Odin, maybe he will not worry about his own life safety, but worry about whether the Earth will exist because of this. You mean it, Thor? Hela's face was gloomy and her tone was cold. But she also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the person who came to the mortal world of the Earth is not Odin, but the useless younger brother. If Odin came in person, she would have to flee farther into the interstellar world. She actually couldn't bear Li Fang. Since entering the White Queen's body, she has gradually fallen in love with Li Fang. So, when Li Fang was threatened with a violent runaway, she and White Queen made a decision almost without hesitation, to kill this overconfident guy. Now, Nick Fury, who is also a threat to Li Fang, is in front of him. If she wanted to, she could crush the tall black man to death with one hand. For Hela, this kind of thing is as simple as everyday food. Nick Fury didn't know, Hela was already thinking about killing herself. But Nick Fury knows one thing very well, that is, if he can't find a proper reason to let Hela let him go, he will probably die. Looking at Nick Fury who was still trying to make excuses, Hela raised a finger coldly. Whoosh! A diamond blade emerged from the void and hovered over Nick Fury's head. How many people know that I'm in Emma's body? Hela asked in a murderous tone. Only me. Nick Fury was sweating coldly, but he still replied very calmly. To be honest, maybe I'll let you go. Hela looked at him coldly. The sharp blade was a little closer to Nick Fury's only remaining eye. Otherwise, I'll smash your last eyeball, make your life worse than death. Don't worry, as S.H.I.E.L.D. director, only I have this authority to see these materials. Nick Fury said in a trembling tone, for security reasons, I didn't disclose it to anyone, and even Thor didn't know the real for the truth, I just told him that you might be on someone from Earth. Hearing this, the killing intent in Hela's eyes faded a bit. And Nick Fury tried his best not to look at the ice crystal blade floating above his head, and then said, also, Thor didn't tell me his purpose of coming to you. Then what? Hela didn't do anything for the time being, she planned to listen to what Nick Fury could turn up. You should have seen the battle in Dayton. Nick Fury swallowed and said in a deep voice, I am the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. My mission is to protect the Earth. Thor, as the god of Asgard, has such a powerful force, I will definitely recruit him. Between you gods and gods, You should understand how important it is to expand your own strength and protect your homeland. Therefore, I promise to help him find you, and the condition is that he joins S.H.I.E.L.D. That's why we investigated you, so you can rest assured that we Earthlings don't have any malice towards the gods of Asgard. On the contrary, we respect powerful people, such as you. Quote. Nick Fury clearly knew that apologizing at this time was useless. Apologizing and begging for mercy when you are about to die will not increase your chances of surviving one iota. Chapter 49 Betting on the Dignity of the Gods. Close black lens bracket. On the contrary, they will die even worse. What can really keep you alive is to prove the value of your own life. Valuable people deserve to live. This is Nick Fury's experience as an agent for decades. Seeing that Hela remained silent, he continued, Miss Hela, I don't think Mr. Li Feng is aware of your existence, and you must be worried about it. I can assure you that I will not tell Thor anything related to you. Regarding the whereabouts, let him know that you are by Li Feng's side, and you certainly don't want to see your younger brother fighting with your husband, right? After hearing Nick Fury's words, Hela's beautiful eyes wrinkled. This is indeed a problem. As a god with the blood of Asgard, she and Thor can communicate with each other. As long as the two parties use their own power, a vision will appear at the moment of resonance. If Thor really fights with Li Feng, she will choose to help Li Feng without any hesitation. But she is only a soul body now, and her strength has long been inferior to before. If Thor really intends to kill the unarmed Li Feng, she can't guarantee that she will be able to stop it. After all, Thor has Mjolnir in his possession. Seeing Hela's thoughtful look, Nick Fury knew that his chance of survival was coming. He hurriedly said, And I will spend my whole life keeping this secret for you until you agree to tell me. As a condition, I can use all the power of S.H.I.E.L.D. to hide your existence. You should understand the strength and heritage of S.H.I.E.L.D. on this earth. Not even the gods of Asgard will find you if we want to. Nick Fury sees death as home. He has shown all his sincerity. Assuming Hela still doesn't agree, he has no other choice. But what he was sure of was that Hela didn't seem to want to kill herself anymore. Because to do that, she would have to use her powers, and if Thor was nearby, she might be exposed. Hela frowned, playing with the diamond-sharp blade in her hand. Her eyes began to weigh. In the face of Asgard, Hela is actually not afraid. Even if Asgard didn't send someone to find her, sooner or later she would trouble Asgard. It was Li Feng who really worried Hela. The more you care, the more you are afraid of losing. She loves Li Feng. White Queen also loves Li Feng. Hela doesn't want to expose her identity until she can't confirm whether Li Feng can accept her existence. Although Li Feng will know the truth sooner or later, both Hela and White Queen hope that the truth will come as soon as possible. In that case, Li Feng will be mentally prepared. Looked at this way, the trade proposed by Nick Fury has some value. Nick Fury, I am the goddess of death in Asgard, the king who followed Odin to conquer the 9 realms. There are no less than 1,000,000 souls from the god realm who died under my blade. Remember what you said. If you dare to go back on your word, I will risk the dignity of the gods and peel off your skin bit by bit, a blood sacrifice. Do you understand? The last word falls. Countless sharp blades floated up, covering every part of Nick Fury. Listen. I understand. Nick Fury answered quickly while his whole body was tense. Next second, there was a flash of green light in the room, and then everything disappeared. Hela also left the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. She largely agrees with Nick Fury. Nick Fury will continue to hide her identity and will not let Thor find her easily. If S.H.I.E.L.D. can't do that, Hela won't give Nick Fury a chance to speak again. After confirming that there were no daggers floating around him, Nick Fury's tense body gradually relaxed. It wasn't until this time that Nick Fury realized that his back was already wet with cold sweat. Panting heavily, he fell on the sofa with a serious expression on his face. The killing intent on Hela was the most powerful among all the women he had ever seen. Even when Hela uttered the last few threatening words to him, he could hear the faint sound of burning sounds all around. This is a scene that only appears when the gods swear. Is this the goddess of Asgard? Have slaughtered a million gods. If such a powerful existence wants to come to the earth, then in their eyes, more than 1 billion human beings are like ants, who can be crushed to death at will. Fortunately, this threat has no special interest in destroying the earth. Otherwise, Nick Fury can only invite the alien that exists in his old key machine. Got to form Avengers ASAP. Nick Fury felt anxious. Originally, he planned to spend some more time grinding those arrogant guys, but now it seems that there is no time left. Thor's arrival had already shocked him a lot. Suppose there is a more powerful existence outside of the Earth. Human beings must have a little bit of power to fight back when facing them. And only S.H.I.E.L.D. can achieve this condition. After leaving the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Hela stepped on a huge amounts of sharp blade, and quickly shuttled through the clouds. The cold wind and frost condensation had no effect on her. 10 minutes later, Hela didn't return to the villa, but landed in a seemingly remote manner. There is a 2-story wooden house inside, and there are some disturbing drinking and noises from time to time. There is even a certain female indescribable voice. Emma, are you sure this is one of Magneto's strongholds? Standing outside the manor, Hela asked the White Queen in her heart. Yes, I used to stay here. The people hiding here are all mutants wanted by X-Men. They used to kill children and old people. The White Queen's crisp voice responded. It's time to teach them a lesson. Hela sneered, turned into a green light, and flickered towards the manor. Tens of seconds later, the light of blood sprinkled every corner of the wooden house. Unlike Nick Fury, Hela and White Queen didn't give these mutants a chance to beg for mercy, and even let them lose their lives without reacting. Although there are more than 20 mutants in the wooden house, there are various variant abilities. Placed elsewhere, this is a force not to be underestimated. But in front of Hela and White Queen, these people are no different from Xiao Xiami. From Hela's start to the end, within 10 seconds, mutant was completely wiped out. In the memory of the White Queen, these mutants were all recruited by Magneto through extreme means. Chapter 50 Dare to take a gamble. Ask for flower evaluation votes. Close black lens bracket. One day in the future, they will kill human beings without mercy. Therefore, Hela did not hold back. Her real purpose is to warn Magneto not to try to get close to Li Feng. As for whether that guy appreciates it or not, that's another story. It was late at night, exactly 11 o'clock. After Natasha Romanoff left Massa and arrived at a certain suburb on the highway, Li Feng got off the car with her. It is close to the slums, and there are high-rise buildings that have been built and demolished everywhere. There is a touch of desolation in the air. It is a relatively rare suburb outside the bustling city of Massa. Shish. Natasha Romanoff put her finger in front of her mouth and said softly, "They're on the basement floor. We'll sneak in through the entrance of the underground garage. There will be mutant patrolling outside, so be careful." Li Feng nodded, deliberately lowered his body, and walked towards the dark entrance of the underground garage. No one noticed that there was a murderous intent in his eyes. Just when the two walked in along the slope entrance of the underground garage. Whoosh! In the garage, a dazzling light suddenly lit up. Li Feng suddenly felt that his whole body was being clamped by thick steel. After he regained his sight, the entire underground garage was already filled with all kinds of mutants, adding up to more than 100, almost filling the surrounding area with water. In front of these mutants, a middle-aged man wearing a red cloak and a metal helmet floated out of nowhere, looking down at Li Feng with a deep sharpness in his eyes. When Li Feng saw this guy's face, he recognized him instantly. Magneto. And behind this guy, a palpitating black mist was quietly floating. "Oh, there are quite a lot of people." Li Feng greeted them with a smile, without much panic on his face. Are you Li Feng?" Magneto, who was suspended in the air, slowly landed in front of Li Feng, with a smile on his face, stretched out his hand towards him, and said, "My subordinates told me that you are very powerful, and I have always liked and powerful you. People to be friends with." Quote. This calm posture, as if everything is under control. Really? Li Feng sneered, not intending to shake hands with him, and asked instead, "But your ostentation, it doesn't seem like you want to make friends with me, but want to fight with me." As soon as this sentence came out, a look of surprise flashed in Magneto's eyes. Why does this guy in front of him look so calm? You know, this underground garage is home to nearly 1/3 of all the mutant groups in Massa City, and each of them has more or less blood on their hands. And he was Magneto, who was once listed as an S-rank wanted criminal by the entire United States military region. Li Feng has no reason not to be afraid, right? Thinking of this, Magneto glanced at Mystique behind Li Feng, as if asking what was going on. Mystique shook her head. Nothing happened along the way, it went smoothly. At the moment Mystique has dropped her disguise and is no longer Natasha Romanoff. Li Feng had guessed her identity a long time ago, so he didn't bother to take care of her. At this time, a sneer suddenly sounded from the crowd. Fighting in groups also depends on whether you have the qualifications. Do you really think you are invincible? Do you believe that as long as our boss wants to, he can crush you an ant with one hand? Ridicule, disdain. Li Feng raised his head expressionlessly and looked somewhere. Angel and Griffin stepped out of the crowd and stood behind Magneto, with crazy sneers on their faces. "It's you two, trash." Li Feng smiled and shook his head, his mood didn't fluctuate. When Magneto saw this scene, he became even more puzzled. He had to admit that Li Feng's calmness was indeed a little too much. This guy didn't seem to pay much attention to the murderous mutants around him. This made Magneto's eyes gradually turn cold. But he was not in a hurry, but smiled at Li Feng and said, "Mr. Li Feng, I know that I have married Emma and you are very affectionate, but you should not know that Emma was once in my house. The men stayed for a while, and murdered many innocent people under my orders. What do you want to say?" Li Feng smiled. "My subordinates told me that you are also a powerful mutant. As I said just now, as the president of the Mutant Brotherhood, I like to make friends with powerful people." Magneto bowed towards Li Feng in a gentlemanly manner, laughing said, "If you are willing to join my camp, and regard all the guys in this world who regard mutants as aliens as enemies, fight to eliminate the discrimination between humans and mutants, and even use your influence among humans, speak up for mutant and support mutant to rule this country, I will thank you and give you more power, how about it?" Hearing this, Li Feng couldn't help but sneer. Good guy. Don't you just want him to come in as a thug? What kind of discrimination is eliminated? To put it bluntly, isn't it because of Li Feng's strength? Sorry, I'm not interested in your proposal. Li Feng refused without any hesitation, with an indifferent expression on his face. Also, don't you think it's rude to seal my limbs with so many steel blocks? He doesn't even want to go to S.H.I.E.L.D., maybe Mutant Brotherhood. Hearing this, the smile and sincerity on Magneto's face also disappeared bit by bit, and there was a bit of murderous intent in his eyes, and he said hoarsely, "Mr. Li Feng, I hope you will think carefully before answering me. I know you are very powerful, but you are nothing in front of me. If you refuse to join us, I think you may not even be able to get out of this underground garage. How about it, do you want to gamble?" The voice fell. Crazy roars erupted throughout the underground garage. "I'm going to peel off this guy's skin. I want to devour his flesh and blood, every inch of him." Very noisy. Look. Magneto sneered, not shying away from the killing intent on his face. "These people are all my believers. As long as I say a word, they will rush towards you. Then, they peel off your skin bit by bit. Let you experience what it means to reject my punishment. Yes, take a gamble." Magneto asked again. The entire underground garage was filled with chilling killing intent. No doubt. Assuming that Li Feng is just an ordinary person, he can only end up in two ways. Or, join Magneto's camp, and finally be killed by the X-Men, and die with regret. Or, resist as a human being and be flayed alive by these mutants. Unfortunately, Li Feng is not an ordinary person. He sighed faintly, and said to the air, "I said it a long time ago, you guys never understand what fear is, so you provoke me again and again, my patience. It's been consumed by you." Chapter 51 One Finger, 100 lives open black lens bracket ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. The last word falls. Li Feng's eyes suddenly shot out a black light, and a terrifying storm of momentum spread out from the bottom of his feet. An oppressive force that made everyone breathless, like thunder descending from the 9 heavens, instantly wrapped everyone in inside. Then, a pair of black inverted triangular pupils nearly 3 meters high looked at every mutant in the underground garage. Then, what is that? Help! Help! Quick! Run! A flood of fear from the void poured down. A deafening wolf howl circled around. The storm rages, and fear descends. Everyone, under the gaze of these pupils, could not move an inch. And Li Feng, with cold eyes, walked up to Magneto step by step, stretched out a finger, and pressed his forehead. He casually dropped 2 words. Goodbye. Click. The helmet on Magneto's head was broken, followed by the skull, and then even the body was torn apart and turned into dust. He didn't react until the last moment before his death. And Mystique, who was standing behind Li Feng, didn't have this ability at all even if she wanted to do it. Those inverted triangular pupils drilled out of the void just stared at everyone in the underground garage. An extremely strong sense of fear occupied every inch of blood vessels deep in their hearts, so that the heartbeat lost the courage to beat at this moment. Hurrah! A cold wind blows. The red robe on Magneto also turned to ashes and disappeared from sight. Everything is dead silent. The hero of a generation, the leader of mutant, Magneto, who has been in the world for decades, died just like that. It happened so fast. None of the hundreds of mutants on the field reacted. But Li Feng's face remained unchanged, as if he was crushing an ant casually, without any extra emotion. Killing Magneto was not the slightest psychological burden on him. It's not that he didn't give this guy a chance, but he didn't cherish it at all. Li Feng is not a nice guy, and he has no intention of putting Magneto on trial. Squeezed to death directly, it's easy. As for these mutants, Li Feng looked at their fearful appearance. The coldness in his eyes didn't dissipate. He heard clearly what the group of guys shouted just now. You asked for it. Words fall. Li Feng raised his finger and swiped lightly. Hiss. Hundreds of mutants fell to the ground. Just a swipe of the finger. Not even blood was sprayed out, and there was not even a scream. In front of their corpses, black vortexes suddenly appeared, and some kind of monster's hand that only appeared in the living hell apocalypse star, stretched out, dragging them in one by one, satisfying their appetite. In Li Feng's eyes, there was no mercy at all. Perhaps among the mutants, there are some kind, good people. But these guys who follow Magneto are all lunatics who hate humans extremely, and there is no reason to forgive them. As a human being who has fully integrated the Steppenwolf template, he can mobilize the power of the Apocalypse Star at any time. Not to mention the whole universe, at least Li Feng has no opponent on Earth who can cause him harm. Maybe an alien creature with infinite gems could. But in Li Feng's eyes, these mutants are all ants, who can be crushed to death if they want to. Ah! Suddenly there was a faint trembling sound behind him. Li Feng turned his head slowly, looked at Mystique who was already limp on the ground, and said coldly, "Oh, I forgot about you, sorry." After speaking, he raised his finger and aimed at Mystique whose eyes were full of tears. No. Don't. Mystique's eyes were full of horror, and her body kept curling back. She thought that if she became Natasha Romanoff and tricked Li Feng here, Magneto and the others would have an absolute advantage. Even if Li Feng could resist, they would not be able to make waves. But what she didn't expect was that what she brought was not some lamb to be slaughtered, but a demon. Slay Magneto's demons with one finger. From the beginning to the end of the action, in less than 30 seconds, more than 100 mutant elites, as well as Magneto, were all wiped out by Li Feng. Not even a single cent of the body was left. And she is the last survivor. At the moment, Mystique has completely lost her ability to think, and her brain is left blank. Her variant ability is shapeshifting, which is an agility skill, and it is impossible to escape from Li Feng's hands. What to do? Beg for mercy. Is that useful? Please, let me go. Let me go, okay. I know Emma. I'm good friends with Emma. We used to grow up together in mutant school. She likes to play with me. Mystique's voice was hoarse, almost begging. But Li Feng's eyes were full of indifference. Facing his enemies, Li Feng never shows mercy. Last time, he relented and let Griffin and Angel go, giving these two guys a second chance to make trouble. But this time, he won't. Just imagine, if he hadn't been keenly aware that Natasha Romanoff was Mystique, if he didn't have the template of Steppenwolf, then the only end of being tricked here would be death. At that time, if Li Feng begged them for mercy, would they let him go? Obviously, no. With Li Feng's finger pointing at her, Mystique suddenly felt an indescribable suffocation in her heart, and then every inch of blood vessel felt like being squeezed, and there was an unimaginable tingling sensation. But just then, a strange blue light flashed, and the scales floating all over Mystique turned into a white queen, appearing in front of Li Feng. Honey, don't kill me, okay? This, white queen, had a pleading face, and the expression was exactly the same as in Li Feng's memory. It is charming and sympathetic. Unfortunately, Li Feng's face was still icy, without any wavering. He is no fool. But Mystique obviously took him for a fool. Just when Li Feng was about to wipe Mystique's neck with his hands, suddenly there was a strange laugh behind him. Jia Jia Jia. A strange black mist descended slowly, blocking between Li Feng and Mystique. Apocalypse. Seeing this figure, Li Feng couldn't help but sneered, "Why? I thought you would never come out. I didn't teach you enough last time, so you came out in such a hurry to seek death. You can't kill me." Apocalypse smiled sullenly and said, "Because my body is not here." Hearing this, Li Feng couldn't help frowning, and the perception spread around. 2 seconds later, he was full of murderous intent, and suddenly roared, "Apocalypse, you are courting death." Chapter 53 Professor X and #039. S conditions. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. An extremely cold killing intent boiled over, and the entire underground garage was overturned. Li Feng raised his hand and grabbed Apocalypse's neck, and said in a cold tone, "I warn you, stay away from my wife. Don't worry, I won't hurt her." Apocalypse smiled slightly and said, "I just want to use her in exchange for something." In exchange for what? Li Feng's face was gloomy, and his killing intent couldn't stop leaking out. He overlooked one thing. It is the White Queen. When he activated perception earlier, he did find that the body of Apocalypse was not here. But what he didn't expect was that the guy had already gone to his villa. Although White Queen is also a powerful existence among mutants, she did not resist ability at all in front of Apocalypse, who has lived for 3,000 years. "I need your genetic sequence." Apocalypse took 2 steps back and forth, and said to Li Feng with a greedy tone, "I have lived for 3,000 years, I am one of the earliest mutants, but it is not enough, it is not enough. As long as you can give me your gene sequence, then I can become the most powerful existence in this world, I can get everything I want, and I can even control the entire mutant group." When Mystique on the side heard this, the fear in her eyes was even greater. "Oh." Li Feng looked at him and sneered, "Is this your purpose?" "Definitely. As long as you cooperate with me, I guarantee that your wife will be safe and sound." Apocalypse said with a weird smile, "Otherwise, I will try my best to deprive her of everything, including her strength, her." Before he finished speaking, Apocalypse suddenly froze. His eyes widened, his face was full of disbelief, and he muttered in his mouth, How would be like this?" After a second, whoosh. Apocalypse's whole body turned into dust and disappeared into the air. Li Feng was also taken aback for a moment, and frowned slightly. What happened? He launched perception detection again, and all signs of life in Apocalypse had disappeared. This. Li Feng narrowed his eyes, not too concerned. He glanced at Mystique, intending to kill her directly, and then go back to see if the White Queen is safe and sound. But at this moment, Mystique beside her suddenly trembled, looked at Li Feng calmly, and said, "Mr. Li Feng, please let Mystique go, she is just bewitched by others, and her heart is not bad." Professor X. Li Feng instantly recognized the source of the tone. 9 times out of 10, Professor X controls Mystique through his own psychic powers. It's me. I'm sorry for the unpleasant things that happened to us before. I sincerely apologize to you again. But Mystique is the child I grew up with, and I can't watch her die and not be indifferent. So I sincerely beg you, as long as you let her go this time, I promise she won't remember anything about you, and she will never trouble you again. I will take the initiative to clear her memory and let her return to her original nature. And, I know you killed Magneto, the mutant differences, and that's the end of it. Professor X's tone was very sincere, and when it came out of Mystique, there was a hint of pleading. In fact, Professor X knew what was going on here as early as when Magneto was killed by Li Feng. There is a connection between him and Magneto. And there are more than 100 mutants gathered here, how could he not know? Definitely, Magneto died. Professor X is also very distressed, after all, he is his good friend. But Li Feng acted too quickly. Even if Professor X wanted to plead, it was useless. At the same time, Professor X also understands that Li Feng cannot be blamed for this incident at all. It can only be said that Professor X has a bad life and has found a problem. Magneto has gone astray, and it's not like he hasn't persuaded him. If this guy, like himself, stayed in the mutant school and lived to train those mutant children, the ending would definitely be different. At least, the government won't target mutant that way. But it was too late. What Professor X can do is to reduce the death of more mutants, and save those mutants who are on the verge of death, pulling them out of the shadows. After listening to Professor X's words, Li Feng just sneered, not agreeing at all. What is your Professor X? Tell me not to kill or not to kill. If you are the one who loses in the end, who knows if you will come out to save others? So even with Professor X's intercession, Li Feng's killing intent towards Mystique has not weakened in the slightest. Only a dead enemy is not worthy of being called an enemy. Only the weeds that are cut off will not grow again. And Professor X obviously also found that Li Feng's killing intent has not weakened. He pleaded again. Mr. Li Feng, I know it's useless to beg you, so I'm willing to take out my chips. I know that your film company is in the development stage. When I was young, Magneto and I won a large amount of gold from the Nazis, and even bought an island in Feijo from the United Nations. The gold was buried in the island down below. Their combined value is nearly 1 billion. If you want, I can give you all of these. I'm old, I just want to raise mutant offspring well, and it's useless to ask for this money. I'll also wipe Mystique's memory to make sure she doesn't remember anything about you and won't cause you any trouble. For Mystique, Professor X is even willing to give up a sky-high fortune, which shows that Professor X still attaches great importance to feelings. This matter is actually no secret to Li Feng. As he is familiar with Marvel plots, he naturally knows that Professor X and Magneto have collaborated in their youth, and also participated in World War II and won a lot of wealth. After all, Professor X has the ability to control the mind, and Magneto can control metal. The two can live for so long, and they must not lack wealth. Even the current Li Feng and Professor X can only be regarded as poor. Regarding Professor X's proposal, Li Feng thought about it, and was really moved. An island in Feijo has countless gold, which is a sky-high price. Who wouldn't be tempted by such wealth? Moreover, Professor X also promises to erase Mystique's memory and won't trouble Li Feng again. This also reduced a lot of Li Feng's killing intent. And what kind of storms can a mere Mystique stir up? If Professor X is smart enough, he should not provoke him again, otherwise there will only be a dead end. Thinking of this, Li Feng had a plan in mind. Charles, I have to say, you're a smart guy. I love talking to smart people. Your condition, I agree. After speaking, Li Feng glanced at Mystique lightly, and walked towards the entrance of the underground garage. Chapter 54 Heliv's Apocalypse. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. I'll have my manager contact you and I hope you will walk the talk and not play tricks. After leaving this sentence, Li Feng's figure gradually merged with the night. He didn't bother to care about the next thing. As for how Professor X cleans Mystique's memory, that's not Li Feng's business. This trip not only eliminated the potential threat of the Mutant Brotherhood, but also reaped a large fortune by the way. Li Feng was quite satisfied in his heart, but he didn't relax his vigilance, and ran towards his villa immediately. "Honey, I'm back, you must be fine." As for Mystique, she was lying on the ground with blank eyes at the moment, and the memories in her mind were being rapidly deleted. Although Professor X is a nice person, he will not be soft when he should be ruthless. Otherwise, how could a good old man be able to protect so many mutants? Do you really think those military and politicians are easy to deal with? Although he chooses to forgive Mystique for the mistakes she made, he doesn't want her to continue to provoke Li Feng beyond her control. Otherwise, the end of Mutant is really coming. If Magneto had known they would end up in 797 games, Professor X would have stopped them no matter what. It's a pity that there are no ifs in the world, and everyone has to pay the price for their own choices. If Magneto hadn't set his sights on Li Feng's wealth, he wouldn't have been killed. How powerful Magneto's Mutant Brotherhood is, the X-Men have the best say. In a head-to-head match, the X-Men may not necessarily win. But such a powerful force was killed by Li Feng single-handedly. Moreover, it is the kind of instant kill. Looking at the torn walls and lifted ground in the underground garage, Professor X understood for the first time what a god on Earth is. And after this battle, the name Li Feng has completely become a taboo in Mutant, and no one dares to touch it anymore. And a few minutes ago, outside Li Feng's villa, the White Queen, who had regained control of her body, hummed a song, and glanced at the fresh steak in her hand, her eyes full of tenderness. But just then, a circle of light suddenly flashed in front of her, and a guy covered in blue walked out of it. "Hi, Emma. AHCB. It is Apocalypse." He smiled softly at the White Queen. Next second, Apocalypse came behind White Queen in an instant, grabbed her fair and tender neck, and said with a strange smile, "Don't move around, as long as you cooperate with me, I will not hurt you. I will exchange you with your husband. Something, and if he doesn't know how to flatter you, you're going to feel sorry for him, won't you?" The White Queen who stood there did not move. It's just that her gentle face suddenly became extremely cold. Even the voice seemed to be a different person. "You are Apocalypse." Apocalypse's expression froze, and he took a few steps back. He felt that there was a terrifying power in White Queen's body. This power didn't belong to Mutant at all, and it was much stronger than him. The White Queen turned around slowly, glanced at the fresh steak that fell on the ground. The murderous intent in her eyes was like wildfire. She walked gracefully to Apocalypse step by step, stretched out a finger expressionlessly, pressing his chest. He said softly, "You have prevented my husband from eating fresh and clean steaks, so please go to hell." Apocalypse's pupils suddenly widened. But the black light that followed instantly tore his body apart. The power of the god of death is enough to crush everything. The White Queen didn't even take a second look, turned around and picked up the steak on the ground, threw it into the trash can, and decided to buy some high-quality Wagyu beef in person. You can't let your favorite people eat stale things, right? However, what no one noticed was that after the White Queen left, a strange blue light gradually emerged on the ground where Apocalypse was standing before, and it followed the street lamps on the street and entered into the light. After Li Feng returned to the villa, he saw the White Queen running back and forth in the kitchen barefoot, apparently cooking dinner for the two of them. Li Feng breathed a sigh of relief, and when he entered the kitchen, he hugged the White Queen into his arms. "What are you doing, cooking?" The White Queen glared at him. "Hey, wife, what are you doing today?" Li Feng grinned and asked. "I won't tell you, go outside and wait," White Queen said coquettishly, pushing him out with her hands. Li Feng smiled, lay down on the sofa and drank milk. As for the matter of X-Men and Magneto, he quickly put it behind him and didn't dwell on it for too long, because it was an episode in his life. With this skill, it is better to think about how to deepen the relationship with White Queen. Speaking of which, with Li Feng's efforts recently, some parts of White Queen seem to be getting bigger. Although it is not obvious, Li Feng can feel it. After all, he has experienced it every day. This is a good start, and Li Feng decided to make persistent efforts to cultivate other sides of White Queen. The threat of mutant was completely resolved with the shots of Li Feng and Hela. I believe that after learning from Professor X and Magneto, there should be no one who is not afraid of death to provoke Li Feng again. And the emergence of Apocalypse is destined to be short-lived. Who made him overreach to threaten the White Queen? If he knew that Hela, the god of death, was inhabiting the White Queen's body, he would probably have had 10,000 guts to do so. In addition, Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. had just been warned by Hela himself, so basically no one would dare to trouble Li Feng. Li Feng and White Queen continued to live a stable and happy life as usual. In a short time, there will be no more troublesome people who don't have good eyesight. And Li Feng also took advantage of this time to film the battle between the Hulk and the Abomination in a 100% restored way. As soon as the film was released, it caused a great sensation, and even the box office far exceeded 80% of Li Feng's expectations. It took Li Feng a while to recover from this number. Although he claimed to add some elements such as contradictions and discrimination with humans in the battle between the Hulk and the Abomination, which can be regarded as adding to the visibility of the movie, but he never thought that the response would be so great. Congratulations to the host for successfully releasing a new movie. Get the Symbiote God template from Venom. Special reminder. The God of Symbiosis is the strongest existence in Venom's hometown. The host will have stronger power than Venom, and the symbiosis is silver white. One morning, Li Feng opened his eyes after waking up, and was about to take a look at the balance opened in his bank card, when he heard such a sentence. The original drowsiness disappeared in an instant, replaced by endless excitement. Chapter 55 The God of Symbiont Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. After signing in strange and useless props for many days in a row, Li Feng finally got a very strong reward again. God of Symbiosis. Resisting the excitement of shouting out loud, Li Feng was ecstatic in his heart. Others may not know what the God of Symbiosis is, but Li Feng knows it very well in his heart. Speaking of symbiotes, many people will think of 10 movies, Venom. The Venom in it once said a word, "I am just a dick in my own planet." And what ability does this dick have? Simple abilities such as soul resistance, magic resistance, super strength, amazing speed, extraordinary endurance, and gene replication will not be mentioned. The most important thing is that Venom can be liquefied, transformed, disguised, and even has an unimaginable healing ability. It can be restored even if it is beaten into a pulp, and it can even be immune to mind control and nuclear radiation. But what makes Li Feng feel the happiest is not this, but the gene sequence of the symbiont. In the Marvel Universe, the symbiont itself is an alien single-celled organism, so this ability is only valid for those with super abilities of the genetic system, and for those without genes elemental life on the mysterious side, or abilities that do not rely on genes ancient one on the magic side. In terms of existence, it is equal to no. The symbiont can even double the host's ability by strengthening the host's gene, and the general ability can reach dozens of times. Generally speaking, in just a few days, the power of the host will become extremely powerful. To put it simply, when you meet the strong, you are strong. Genes support the basic structure and performance of life and store all the information of life's race, blood type, gestation, shape, ability, growth, apoptosis and other processes. The interdependence of environment and heredity plays an important role in the reproduction of life, cell division and protein synthesis and other important physiological processes. And all life phenomena such as birth, growth, decline, disease, old age, and death of organisms are related to genes. It so happens that Venom, the god of symbiosis, can have the strongest linkage with Li Feng's genes originally. And what needs to be known is that the symbiont template obtained by Li Feng is not the DIOC symbiont in the movie, but the god of symbiotes. It is conceivable that when he uses both the Steppenwolf template and the symbiote god template, the genes between the two will definitely change. At that time, a true ultimate life form will be born. It cannot be killed, it cannot be destroyed. Even if it is thrown into a black hole and resists the Big Bang, it will not die. Any attack method is useless against it. Moreover, any form of attack may lead to the evolution of Li Feng's genes, thus becoming more powerful. To put it simply, this is a kind of unsolvable life that cannot be killed, and the more it attacks, the stronger it becomes. It is conceivable how powerful the template obtained by Li Feng is. He can even clearly feel that his body has integrated with the genes of the god of symbiosis. As long as he wants, he can completely turn himself into a liquefied existence. This is because the god of symbiosis will evolve autonomously, and will evolve many times in a very short period of time. At first, I was worried about what to do when I met that purple potato essence, but now it seems that it is completely worthwhile. I'm afraid of those gods in the universe. Quote. Li Feng thought with satisfaction, and the confidence in his heart became stronger. The template of Steppenwolf is indeed very powerful. After all, its genes are the celestial group. But Steppenwolf is not an invincible existence. His strength has a limit, and Li Feng has gradually felt this limit. Although he hasn't fully summoned the Steppenwolf, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have an estimate of the power of this template. Originally, Li Feng was thinking about whether he should look for opportunities to collect infinite gems so as to enhance his strength. After all, although the alien creatures of the new Protoss like the Steppenwolf can walk sideways on the Earth, if the opponent is the ancient existence in the universe, it will be a bit powerless. But now, there is no need for this at all. The template of the god of symbiosis gave Li Feng sufficient confidence. Even Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet in his hand, he wouldn't pay attention. In a world as dangerous as Marvel's, there's nothing more exciting than improving your powers. After all, with strength, Li Feng can not only protect himself, but also protect his wife. Husband, why are you so excited so early in the morning? At this time, the White Queen also woke up, and when she opened her eyes, she saw Li Feng laughing foolishly by herself. Li Feng didn't explain. The system and time travel are his biggest secrets, and he didn't tell anyone, not even the White Queen. 0. Seeking flowers. If this kind of secret is revealed, not only will it not do any good, it may even ruin everything about yourself. The White Queen didn't care, but hugged Li Feng's neck, and said with a light smile, "Since you are so energetic, then I really don't have a drop." Soon, the two of them were covered under the quilt. There was a creaking sound in the room. After being satisfied, Li Feng quickly entered the state of a sage. After tidying up, he ate the breakfast prepared by White Queen himself, and then went out to the set to see the preparation progress of the new movie. After being tormented by Li Feng, White Queen not only did not show any signs of fatigue, but also told Li Feng with special energy that she would play like this every morning after getting up. 0. This made Li Feng want to cry. This has not yet reached the age of wolves and tigers, it is so crazy. If it really comes to that time, is it still worth it? However, Li Feng didn't care too much. After all, he has all kinds of templates on him. The appearance of the god of symbiosis template made Li Feng's heart full of confidence all of a sudden. Tired. 18 times a night, no pressure. How strong it is now, Li Feng himself doesn't know. Because there is no opponent, Li Feng doesn't know if he can beat Thanos with one finger now. If so, it would be too boring. At the moment, S.H.I.E.L.D., Grant Ward's office. During this period of time, he has been looking for information related to Li Feng and White Queen. Grant Ward still remembers Nick Fury's expression at that time. This also made him more sure that Nick Fury must be trying to hide some terrible secret. It's just that Nick Fury's actions are too fast, he has no way to get the highest authority, and can only conduct investigations in other ways. After a lot of trouble, Grant Ward finally obtained the information of Li Feng and White Queen as he wished. First up is Li Feng, from the initial encounter with Captain America to the recent killing of Magneto and the mutants by Li Feng. Chapter 56 Grant and #039. S crazy open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Grant Ward watched with horror. Li Feng is such a terrifying existence. Now the industry regards him as an outstanding young director, and no one would think of him in this regard. No wonder Nick Fury is keeping this a secret. In fact, it wasn't just Grant Ward. When Nick Fury knew about Magneto, he was also taken aback. It wasn't until then that Nick Fury realized that neither of Li Feng and his wife was easy to mess with. Ahila, god of Asgard, of immeasurable strength, sharing a body with the White Queen. Li Feng directly killed Magneto, one of the strongest mutants. It is really in line with the old saying, if you are not a family, you will not enter a family. Subsequently, Grant Ward saw Hela's information again. After contacting Thor intentionally or unintentionally these days, he more or less knows some of Hela's origin and identity. Although compared with Li Feng's extensive information, Hela's information is much less. But what shocked Grant Ward was Hela's identity. Goddess of death conquering the 9 realms. Compared with Li Feng, this identity is much more terrifying. No matter how many ideas Grant Ward had, they were crushed by himself. Don't say anything else. A single Hydra organization, no matter how powerful it is only an organization established by mortals. Does it compare to some aliens from Asgard? Not at all. Moreover, given that we are currently in the era of mutant, S.H.I.E.L.D. is keeping a close eye on everything, so Hydra can only do some dirty things secretly, and dare not even show up in public. How could it be possible to provoke these two terrible guys? Grant Ward sighed and shook his head, and put away the materials of Hela and Li Feng. There is no need to read any further. As an undercover agent, he clearly knows the strength of Hydra. The top management of Hydra is not a fool. If they know that they can't be provoked, they still get along with them. Isn't that courting death? But at this moment, a rather crazy idea rose in Grant Ward's mind. HYDRA's consistent belief is to pursue or control powerful people. No, how could I have such an idea? People in Hydra will never betray their beliefs. Grant Ward dismissed the idea as soon as it arose. You must know that Hydra's purpose all along is to welcome back its own god. Hydra is an organization. Many readers who read the manga think that it originated from NAZIHYDRA, but it is not. NAZIHYDRA is just a branch of Hydra in the long history, and it cannot be regarded as the orthodox Hydra. Moreover, this department was founded by Red Skull following the Hydra concept of the past, and is not the orthodox Hydra. The orthodox Hydra organization coexists with each historical branch and silently supports the development of each branch. Moreover, the origin of the orthodox Hydra organization is quite early. About 1400 years ago, a powerful alien hive appeared on the Earth at that time. This alien was sent to a distant planet because of his strong ability. And the purpose of Hydra is to let this alien return. In their hearts, this alien is a god. The Hydra branch and the main branch of each period have to send people to the planet where the hive is located through the Blackstone portal, swallowing Gemma Simmons' stone. Those who have read the comics will have the impression, in order to save or serve the hive, that is, the current known as the Far Star Project. But until now, the Far Star Project has not been completed, mainly because Hydra has not received a response from the hive, and this project has also been shelved. Up to now, Hydra basically does not have any expectations for the Far Star Project. Maybe you can try this way. Find a new god and worship her. In this way, Hydra may not need to worship any hive aimlessly. Grant Ward suddenly thought, and there was a touch of madness in his eyes. Hydra is a very large organization with many divisions. Each branch has a leader. Although Grant Ward is an undercover agent, he is also a very important undercover agent, so he still has a little influence in this area. In addition, there are some other leaders, and Grant Ward will basically not contact them for nothing, unless there are some key tasks. They will get together. Soon, Grant Ward secretly contacted the leaders of several other Hydra divisions, and expressed his plans and ideas. Originally, Grant Ward was already ready to be reprimanded and even punished. After all, his plan was a betrayal of faith. But what Grant Ward didn't expect was that the leaders of several other branches, after hearing what he said, all fell silent without exception. In Hydra, silence is everything means there is no voice against it. Grant Ward was amazed by this, but soon figured out why. In fact, This is also very normal. The hive has disappeared for 1400 years. After such a long time, there is no loyalty at all. Hydra has been hiding her name all these years, it is really aggrieved. Change to the boss, maybe the day of success will come. Moreover, Hela's origin and name are much more powerful than that, hive. God of Death. Rule the 9 realms. Conquer the 9 realms. Such a powerful existence, how cool is it to be the boss of Hydra? Definitely, the main reason is that Hydra urgently needs to find a backer. Although the current Hydra members are still all over the world, under the attack of S.H.I.E.L.D., they have no chance to show their faces at all, so many plans have come to nothing. Also because at the moment is often caught by S.H.I.E.L.D. This cautious situation is like walking a tightrope, you must watch every move of S.H.I.E.L.D. every moment, otherwise death and destruction will come at any time. Once all the strongholds of Hydra are taken away, the efforts of the past century will be in vain. No matter how powerful an organization is, it can't compare to a country, right? Hydra was able to make great contributions in World War II, what is the reason for its great reputation? Hitler, fascism, evil empire. 4.7 They have no shortage of manpower and resources, and most importantly, they are surrounded by a well-known boss who can do whatever they want. But with the demise of that evil enemy country, Hydra has become a maggot in the sewer, can only linger on, and can hardly do anything. Now is the best opportunity to untie this knot. After getting answers from those colleagues, Grant Ward began to think carefully about how to approach Hela. If Hela is willing to accept the belief of these Hydra members, then the rise of the Hydra Empire will be led by the star field outside the Earth, Asgard, and it will be a breeze to conquer Zion human beings. But once it fails, Grant Ward wondered if he would survive. Chapter 57 Sorcerer Supreme and #039. S invitation open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. The risks and benefits between the two are too great for Grant Ward to be careless. After thinking for a long time and analyzing it over and over again, Grant Ward decided to try it. He has no way out. After seeing the powerful power of S.H.I.E.L.D., he can't see the future of Hydra, so he can only gamble at this time. Thinking of this, Grant Ward gave instructions to one of his agents to contact Hela first. As for whether it will be successful or not, it depends on God's will. And that man named Li Feng. Hydra will always be a believer under your command. My respected God of Death, will you accept us? Grant Ward's eyes flickered and his face was crazy. Li Feng, who was discussing the plot with several well-known screenwriters on the set, had a carrier pigeon flying from nowhere on his shoulder. On the carrier pigeon's feet, there is a string of sheepskin-colored paper strips. Li Feng froze for a moment, and took the note off the carrier pigeon's sole. When he saw the signature above, he couldn't help being surprised. Ancient 07. How did she know me? A simple sentence was written on the note, to the effect that he hoped that Li Feng could come to the holy place to look for him and meet him. As the protector of the earth, the Ancient One known as the Sorcerer Supreme, Li Feng feels that he still needs to be respected. Although he didn't understand why Ancient One would come looking for him, he always felt that this matter was a bit weird. Moreover, Ancient One still kept the time gem. Li Feng felt that he should go there. After leaving the set, Li Feng set off. According to the positioning on the navigation, he found the nearest holy place in the center of the capital city of the United States, and walked in. There are 3 holy places in Kamar Taj, and the center of the capital city of the United States is one of them. Every holy place is equipped with special magic, which ordinary people can't see at all. Definitely, Li Feng must be able to see it. His sensory ability is already very good, so the disguise of the holy place is useless in front of him. Walking into the holy place, a sense of simplicity comes over us. When Li Feng entered the holy place, a magician walked up. Come with me, the Ancient One magician is waiting for you. This magician didn't appear in the movie, so Ji Feng didn't care. After he nodded, he followed the magician into the depths of the holy place, where there was a staircase leading to the 2nd floor. The magician said to Li Feng respectfully. Li Feng hesitated for a while, but decided to go in and have a look. One is that they are strong enough, so they don't have to worry about Ancient One being bad for them. Secondly, Li Feng also wanted to know why Ancient One invited him here. After entering the second floor, Li Feng found that in front of him, there was a person wearing a magician robe and a hood with his back facing him. After realizing that someone was coming, the man turned around and looked at Li Feng. It is the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. Hello, Li Feng Courier. Ancient One nodded politely to Li Feng, just like in the movie, with an extraordinary temperament. The same is true for Li Feng. After greeting, he began to ask about the purpose of Ancient One. Sorcerer Supreme, I don't know that you invited me over, is there something wrong? Li Feng asked straightforwardly, a little curious about the purpose of Ancient One. PLZ follow me. Ancient One smiled, and didn't speak directly, but in front of Li Feng, he suddenly opened his hands and drew a virtual circle in the air. Soon, something like a portal appeared in front of Li Feng. Through the portal, Li Feng saw at a glance the snow-covered mountains not far away, as well as the Taoist temple on the mountain. This is exactly Kamar Taj. Ancient One made a gesture of invitation to Li Feng and said, Mr. Li Feng, welcome to Kamar Taj. After speaking, he walked in. Li Feng did not refuse. Anyway, he also wanted to visit Kamar Taj. After all, this place is a rare clean place in big cities. Soon, the two came to Kamar Taj through the portal. This place is known as the Strange Holy Land. The entire house is in the ancient architectural style of the Chinese dynasty, and the Haodai loft exudes an immortal atmosphere everywhere, which calms Li Feng's impetuous heart a little. And when Li Feng and Ancient One appeared here together, the monks who were guarding the holy places hurriedly bowed slightly to Ancient One, their faces full of respect. As for Li Feng, there was a hint of wariness in their eyes. But Li Feng didn't have any thoughts about these people, and he didn't bother to talk to them, so he followed Ji Yu Tong into the courtyard. In the courtyard, the magicians who were practicing magic on the square appeared in front of Li Feng. Li Feng glanced over the faces of these people one by one, and suddenly asked curiously, Ancient One magician, is there anyone named Stephen Strange here? Stephen Strange. Upon hearing this, Ancient One stopped suddenly, and then she looked at Li Feng in surprise and asked, How do you know this name? I have to say, Li Feng's question was too coincidental. It turned out that just yesterday, a man who claimed to be from the capital of the United States came to Kamar Taj. The man's name is Stephen Strange. He was originally an excellent neurosurgeon. Due to a car accident, his hands could no longer use the scalpel to work normally. In order to cure his hands, he went to famous doctors all over the world to no avail. As a result, in despair, he could only come to the Himalayas to seek help from 370 Gushi. And as a profound magician, Ancient One naturally blocked this guy out like a plot. Now, it is estimated that he is still starving and freezing. But Ancient One never expected that Li Feng would actually mention this name. This was really beyond his expectation. Seeing Ancient One's reaction like this, Li Feng knew that the plot of Dr. Strange should have started by now. He smiled casually and said, Dr. Stephen is a very powerful person. When I went to the capital of the United States, I had a conversation with him. No matter from which aspect, he has shown his knowledge. Ancient One smiled calmly, and then brought Li Feng to his special place for entertaining guests. The two sat down facing each other. Ancient One poured 2 cups of green tea, and the fragrance filled the whole room in an instant. Li Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip, and exclaimed, Not bad, good tea. You also know how to drink tea? Ancient One asked slowly. Understand a little. Li Feng was not in a hurry, and responded calmly. In front of this old magician who has lived for hundreds of years, he didn't want to reveal too much. Because he still doesn't know what the purpose of this guy calling him here is. Don't be nervous, Mr. Li Feng, I called you here just to communicate with you, I have no ill intentions towards you. Chapter 58 How about a bet? Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Ancient One smiled and said to Li Feng, with a calm expression and clear eyes. It seems that there is indeed no killing intent overflowing. However, Li Feng didn't fully believe it either, and it is imperative to be on guard against others. To make friends, there is no need for such a big battle, right? Not only took me to Kamar Taj, but also secretly converted the surrounding space into a mirrored space. It seems that your sincerity is not enough. Li Feng said indifferently. From the moment he came in, he had already noticed the fluctuations in the surrounding space. In other words, this is a mirror space, and the whole world cannot be connected to the outside world except Li Feng and Ancient One. This is not the attitude of making friends, it is more like wanting to take action against oneself. Ancient One shook his head, still with the same calm posture, and said softly, Mr. Li Feng, I am very interested in you, because some things you have done recently have aroused my great curiosity. Can you tell me, how did you get your strength? Ancient One's words revealed a message, that is, she has been paying attention to Li Feng for a long time, and she also knows that Li Feng's strength is very strong, the kind that is too strong. This is also the reason why she didn't do it as soon as she came in. If you have something to say, just talk about it, don't beat around the bush. If you really want to make friends with me, I hope you will show your sincerity. The more Ancient One said, the more Li Feng confirmed his guess. This Sorcerer Supreme really planned to deal with him. But Li Feng is not afraid either. He doesn't know how strong he is now, but it is definitely not something that Ancient One can fight against. If he wants to give it a try, he can do it anyway. Ancient One smiled slightly at Li Feng, stood up and said, Mr. Li Feng, you are very smart. Indeed, when I invite you to Kamar Taj, I don't just want to make friends with you. I was also entrusted by an old friend. He is very interested in your power, and even more interested in everything around you. But he can't come to you anytime and anywhere, so he asked me to say hello to you. Hearing this, Li Feng narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, Who? The guy who asked me doesn't want me to tell you who he is. However, if you want to know, let me see your strength. Li Feng also stood up and asked, What do you want to see? How about we make a bet? As long as you can cause substantial damage to me in this mirror space, then I will not only grant you all the magic I have mastered, but also tell you who that guy is. If you can't break free, don't worry. You need to stay in Kamar Taj for half a year. During this half year, you can't return to the United States. I will do my best to take care of you with the best hospitality. You. Ancient One has no hesitation, and stated its purpose, a gamble. As for Li Feng, after listening to Ancient One's statement, not only was there no fluctuation in his heart, he even wanted to laugh a little. Just relying on this mere mirror image space, hoping to trap him, is Ancient One too inflated, or does he feel that he is too weak? Moreover, he has entered the mirror space now, is it up to him to bet or not? Even if Li Feng doesn't want to gamble, he has no choice. However, it seemed that Ancient One did not have any malice towards him, but the purpose was a bit strange. Lock him up for half a year. This is why. What will happen in the next 6 months? Li Feng didn't continue to think too much, because at the level of Sorcerer Supreme, everything she did had her deep meaning, so it was pointless for him to guess. As for the spells that Ancient One knows, Li Feng doesn't care. Well, let's start now, I look forward to your performance. Ancient One smiled, and then his body gradually became translucent. He just stood there, motionless, and smiled at Li Feng. Li Feng shook his head helplessly. He would not have accepted Ancient One's invitation if he had known it would be such a trouble. Now that things have happened, Li Feng no longer has a hesitation. Isn't it just a mere mirror space? Li Feng didn't move too much, just sneered, stretched out a finger, and pointed lightly in the direction where Ancient One was standing. Whoosh! Immediately, his fingers turned into countless huge amounts of tree roots, drilled out from the flat ground, and rushed towards Ancient One. The appearance of these tree roots not only caused the entire mirror world to spin, but also caused large cracks to appear around it. And this is just the beginning. Now Li Feng has no idea how much destructive power he can cause with all his strength. But one thing is certain, the so-called mirror world is almost nothing in his eyes. The thick tree roots swept towards Ancient One like crazy, and even spread along those tall buildings. Then, countless terrifying branches centered on Li Feng and spread out like a spider web. These shocking tree roots did not touch Ancient One for the first time, but expanded constantly and became deeper and deeper. Gradually, the high-rise buildings in the entire space began to crack, and the basic structure of the entire Earth began to collapse. Endless tree roots surged up to the ground along the cracks, and the originally peaceful world suddenly turned into a towering tree with lush branches and leaves. And Li Feng and Ancient One just stood in the space. You looked at me, and I looked at you. Next second, countless branches of the tree trunk stopped the operation of the entire mirror world. The ear-piercing loud noises continued to be heard, followed by terrible earthquakes. The mirror world began to collapse, and the entire space began to disintegrate. Li Feng raised the corners of his mouth and moved his lips lightly. Whoosh whoosh. The tree roots entwined around, as if being watered by the water of life, swept towards Ancient One crazily. As for the translucent Ancient One standing in place, her entire face was filled with disbelief. Qian Li's. Before the tree roots were about to touch her, she suddenly raised her 2 fingers and took a drink. The roots came in an instant. Then, the entire space collapsed into pieces. But Ancient One suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and took several steps back, almost unable to stand still. After breaking the mirror space, Li Feng found that the scene around him had changed, and it happened to be one of the holy places in the capital of the United States. This is the real world. He is not in Kamar Taj Pine, but in the holy place of the United States. Li Feng gradually raised his head and looked at Ancient One not far away. The latter wiped the corner of his mouth, with deep shock in his eyes, and said, "Your performance is much stronger than I expected. What did you do just now? Why did I lose control of the mirror space?" This kind of the situation has always been only. Black magic will appear, right? Li Feng snatched her words and asked back. Chapter 59 Odin and #039. Rage open black lens bracket subscribe, close black lens bracket. There was a killing intent in Ancient One's eyes. Li Feng was right. Such destructive power, in her impression, has only appeared when using black magic. Would you like to gamble? Li Feng didn't speak, but looked at Ancient One coldly and said. He doesn't want to conflict with Ancient One, but it doesn't mean he is afraid of Ancient One. In other words, Ancient One didn't really attack him, otherwise he wouldn't let this guy go easily. As for the method used just now, it was the combination of the God of Symbiosis and the Steppenwolf power. He can transform the God of Symbiosis in his body into anything through his imagination. The Steppenwolf template just enhances this kind of glory. No need, you won. This is the first time I've lost to an Earthling who isn't a magician. You're not using black magic, are you? Ancient One looked at Li Feng and asked. Definitely. Li Feng smiled disdainfully and said, that thing is nothing compared to my strength. Ancient One was silent for 2 seconds, and did not continue to question Li Feng's words. Since she is a sorcerer supreme, she can naturally feel that there is no shadow of black magic on Li Feng. She said softly, Mr. Li Feng, as I said just now, I will teach you all the magic that I have mastered, as long as you are willing to learn. I'm not very interested in this matter can be put aside. I'm even more curious, who sent you to touch me, a magician? Li Feng folded his hands on his chest, leaned against the wall, and asked lightly. Ancient One pondered for a few seconds, then said, the main god of Asgard. Odin. Odin. Li Feng frowned. Why did Odin notice him? Logically speaking, he hasn't been in contact with Thor yet, so he won't provoke this lunatic who is known as the King of War in the 9 realms, right? Don't worry, Odin meant no harm to you. Ancient One seemed to see what Li Feng was thinking, and said. What does he want from me? Li Feng asked. Nor. Ancient One shook his head. Li Feng didn't ask any further questions. It's not a good thing to be targeted by an Asgard god. But he knew that Odin's time was approaching, and it was probably impossible for him to have any thoughts about him. What kind of collision can happen between 2 people who cannot reach each other? Ancient One Magician. Li Feng glanced at Ancient One and said calmly, I'm not a good-tempered person. Next time if this happens again, I will demolish all 3 of your holy places. See you later. After speaking, Li Feng turned and left. He had no intention of staying any longer at all, nor did he plan to make friends with Ancient One. No need. As long as Ancient One doesn't come to trouble him. After hearing Li Feng's threat, Ancient One paused for 2 seconds and smiled helplessly. It wasn't until Li Feng left completely that her expression became serious. From the very beginning, Ancient One didn't expect the mirror space to trap Li Feng. Her real purpose is not to test Li Feng's strength. Instead, I want to see if there is the power emperor of the goddess of death on this guy. Now it seems that there is no such thing at all. Originally, she planned to use the power of Time Gem to continue the test, but Li Feng's previous strength was too strong. She was worried that Time Gem would not be able to withstand it, and she was also worried that Li Feng would blow up because of this. The place was destroyed. Moreover, that gamble, Ancient One originally, was about to lose. Some people pursue magic until they die, but they can't find any trace of magic. And some people, even if you are not interested in magic, someone will let you learn it. Li Feng is the latter. The reason why Ancient One is willing to teach Li Feng magic is because of his strength. She, who owns the Time Gem, has seen what will happen sometime in the future. She doesn't want Li Feng to be the protector of the earth like her, but only wants Li Feng to be able to resolve disputes when the earth is in danger after he learns magic. AHCE. Definitely, apart from this small thought, there is another important reason. It was entrusted by others, as she said earlier. The purpose of that old friend was not to trap Li Feng, but to find out whether Li Feng possessed the power of the goddess of death. Now it seems that this is just Li Feng's own strength. Odin, you have been hiding in Asgard for hundreds of years, why don't you dare to come out from the 9 realms and face those powerful beings? Ancient One walked to the window, looked up at the sky, and sighed in a calm tone. He said, the morals of the world are about to change. At the moment, Asgard, the main hall. Odin sat on the altar, holding a scepter, with a gloomy face. He is very angry. There are 2 sources of anger. The first one is his chosen successor, the rebellious son, who ran to the earth again, and despite his own warning, asked the earth people to help him find Hela. The second one, of course, is Hela. After Hela escaped from the seal before, Odin had never been so angry, at most he was a little worried. But when he learned that Hela was parasitic in a mortal body with Li Feng, and became husband and wife with Li Feng, Odin was completely enraged. His son. His daughter. Which is not the most powerful god in the god realm. Which has no noble blood of Asgard. Thor actually fell in love with a mortal and brought her home. Hela went so far that she even found a mortal to marry without telling her. In the future, will you still have children? Integrate the noble blood of Asgard with the mortal blood of the people on earth. This is simply an insult to the glory of Asgard. Not to mention how angry Odin, as an old father, was when he heard that his cabbage was raped by a pig. But no matter how angry he was, he didn't lose the rationality he should have as a god king. Although Hela was deprived of the godhood and imprisoned in dungeon back then, resulting in a bad relationship between the two, he still did not want to see this powerful child living in the world. Hela is her daughter, and that will never change. But his daughter found a mortal, which made Odin always accept that she shouldn't. Odin was even more uncomfortable than the previous Hela rebellion. Heimdall, tell Thor to go and kill that mortal. Odin spoke to Heimdall. He decides to execute Li Feng and bring Hela back to Asgard. After hearing Odin's order, Heimdall did not leave immediately, but said with a blank expression, Your Majesty Odin, are you sure you want Thor to go? Chapter 60 Hydra and #039. S Refuge open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Otherwise, let you go. Odin sneered and said, Thor is my son, he obeys my orders, and it is one of his destiny to protect the blood of Asgard. But your son, even with Mjolnir, can't beat your daughter. Heimdall didn't shy away from anything, he always spoke directly. Odin's order is not to kill Li Feng, it is clearly to ask Thor to die. Today's Thor is still too immature, and it is impossible to be the opponent of Hytildala. If you go to the door, you can only die in vain. Odin also reacted after hearing Heimdall's reminder. His face became more gloomy. Since this is the case, then I have to go to the earth in person and bring back my 2 unfilial descendants. By the way, let that mortal see what is called a real god. Odin was so angry that his beard was about to stand up. Because of the excitement, even the veins on the neck burst. If that's the case, the entire planet might be destroyed. And have you forgotten? You have been stared at by the cosmic celestial group. If you interfere with other civilizations, you will be discovered soon. At that time, Asgard will fall into a passive state. Heimdall persuaded, hoping that Odin could calm down a little. Cosmic God Group, this name is too big. In the very early days, Odin once fought with the people of the celestial group. But he didn't get any benefits from it at all, and instead made enemies with them. Over the years, Odin gradually calmed down, and did not pay attention to things outside the universe. But Heimdall is different. He knows everything in the universe. Therefore, once Odin leaves Asgard, the cosmic celestial group will definitely find a way to make trouble. After hearing the name of the Tenjin group, Odin also gradually calmed down. He is old. If he was young, let alone the cosmic god group, in the entire 9 realms, no creature could stop him. But now, it's different. So, he can't go to Earth. But when he thought that his daughter and son were all in love with the mortals on the Earth, and even wanted to marry and have children, Odin felt as if he had swallowed gunpowder and was furious. That mortal is the most critical existence. Just kill him and everything will settle down. Odin took a deep breath, with tired eyes. If only that boy Loki was still around. At this time, Thor's mother Frigg came out. When Hela rebelled, I never saw you so angry. Frigga smiled helplessly, and took Odin's hand. Can that be the same? Odin snorted coldly. But if you hadn't been so angry and locked up that child Hela, she wouldn't have disobeyed you, right? Frigga said softly, you have lived for tens of thousands of years. Let the children handle their own affairs. Quote. Frigga doesn't actually object to Hela and Li Feng's matter. As the mother of the gods, Frigga is not a person who likes to fight and kill. But Odin doesn't think so. For the gods who can conquer the 9 realms, kindness is always superfluous in their hearts. Li Feng, who returned to the set, did not realize that there was a greater danger coming. He didn't realize that, in fact, he got one thing wrong from the beginning. That's right. He doesn't fight or fight, he wants to live a stable life, he wants to have a perfect family, and he doesn't want too much trouble. But many times, trouble will come to you on its own initiative. In the final analysis, the reason is that Li Feng has power. Power. Not to mention the power given to him by the system, just after he quickly became a famous director, troubles will also follow. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility and the more trouble. This is the result of Li Feng keeping a low profile as much as possible, otherwise he will have more troubles. Captain America, S.H.I.E.L.D., these troubles that have been staring at him from the very beginning, he ignored. If he let go of his body and mind to participate in it, I'm afraid the butterfly effect will be even more terrifying. From the flapping of the tiniest butterfly's wings, to a huge amounts of storm at the end. From being targeted by gangsters such as Rampage at the beginning, to now being targeted by Odin of Asgard. And this is just the beginning. When Li Feng was fighting Ancient One magician, an uninvited guest broke into his villa. An agent from Hydra. Wearing a mask and a black tights, she easily escaped the sight of the bodyguards at the door and entered the courtyard. 0. Seeking flowers. But when she just walked to the door of the living room, she was discovered by White Queen's keen perception. White Queen originally planned to kill the intruder directly, but she found that the intruder did not seem to be hostile through telepathy, so she temporarily shelved this idea. Out of curiosity, she stood in front of the female agent and asked coldly, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The female agent was still very vigilant, but after seeing the White Queen, she took off the mask almost without any hesitation, and said respectfully, "Dear God of Death, my name is Rena, from the Great Hydra, and I am the agent of Hydra member. In view of your noble status, my commander specifically ordered me to come and offer my loyalty to you." After saying this, she looked at the White Queen devoutly and fanatically. Hydra may not be very good in other things, but its brainwashing skills are still very solid. After hearing what the female agent said, Queen Bai Huang couldn't help frowning. Hydra. This organization, he had heard from Magneto before, but never paid attention to it. But, how did they know that Hela exists in their bodies? This made the White Queen feel a little killing intent. But soon Hela took control of her body, looked at the female agent coldly, and said, "Did my younger brother tell you that I am here?" "No, Hydra has a huge intelligence network." The female agent said sincerely, "Please forgive me, we investigated your information, so we came to you, but don't worry, we have no malicious intentions." "Oh." Hela sneered, crossed her legs, sat on the sofa, and said, "Hydra, right. I don't accept loyalty without value, tell me your value." Hela did not refuse Hydra's refuge, but she did not accept it easily either. Not all cats and dogs are qualified to follow the great goddess of death. Back then, when she was fighting in the Nine Realms, she didn't know how many Inhumans wanted to join her, but she blocked them all. As the only goddess of death in Asgard, she has arrogance in her heart. How much value can a group of mortals have? After the female agent heard Hela's words, she rationalized her thinking and introduced the origin of Hydra and the distribution of various strengths. The tone was no different from that of promoting products, and she wanted to dedicate her organization to Hela.